Chapter 1082. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. He wanted to take all the purple coins in front of him into his pocket. Of course, he couldn't just say some useless things. This middle-aged man had some special information channels and sources. It didn't take long for him to ramble on and on about a lot of secret. Of course, these secrets were all worthless to Chinyu. He was ready to leave. If it was the so-called big news, it was just these useless family trifles. And those personal fights. Then there was no need for him to waste time here. But the middle-aged man thought that he was dissatisfied with the things he said. Then he could only try his best to say more secret. But Chinyu didn't have the patience to listen. If he continued to listen, it would only waste more of his time. Do you want to know about the inheritance of the birth of the treasure? I have a lot of information about this. You remember how powerful the true God is. The inheritance I want to talk about is related to the legendary true God. But if you want to know, this little price isn't enough. This time, the middle-aged man was able to tell that Chinyu did not lack such a small amount of money. So he couldn't help but want more things. For example, even more precious treasures or even more purple coins. But Chinyu didn't lack these at all. He was also interested in the so-called inheritance of the true God. He simply took out a rough sack used to store some rough things. He directly filled the sack with purple coins and casually threw it to the middle-aged man. The reason why he had to put such a sack on was because there were too many purple coins. Suddenly, there was no way to collect all of them. It wasn't easy to take them. So he casually found a shabby sack to put them in. If he hadn't carefully checked that the sack was indeed full of purple coins, the middle-aged man thought that he had been deceived. Who would put good things in such a shabby sack? But looking at Chinyu, he couldn't say this sentence. After all, this was Chinyu's own thoughts. He wasn't qualified to judge there. At least for now. He was sure that this money was enough for him to spend freely for a long, long time. Its value was enough to buy a lot of good treasures. The middle-aged man finally revealed everything he knew. It was said to be related to the true God, but in fact, there was no one who could obtain the inheritance. That place had existed for a long time. Almost every 100 years, a group of people would rush in to explore. This year, tomorrow would be the opening day. The inheritance was still there, shining brightly. Everyone knew that the inheritance inside was real. However, no one had the ability to rush in and truly obtain a good inheritance. Occasionally, there would be people who would receive 1 or 2 pointers from a true God, and they would benefit greatly. Most people couldn't even get 1 or 2 pointers. But as long as one went in, they would not return empty-handed. It was precisely because of this that many people were still willing to go in and explore. The middle-aged man didn't know what kind of strength Chinyu had. However, that place didn't have many restrictions on strength. As long as one was a true god or below, one could enter. It was just that when one reached an extremely high level, almost no one was able to obtain the inheritance of a true god. Every year, fewer and fewer experts were willing to enter. Either that, or those who entered were of average strength. They wanted to go in and fight. They obtained some good resources for their own use. Or those who were bitterly searching for the inheritance. They wanted to improve their current strength. They wanted to enter the true God realm and become a super expert. These people often didn't give up and tried many times, but none of them succeeded. However, for most people, having such an opportunity was already many, many times better than not having such an opportunity at all. At least, it was the hope that was there. See if you're satisfied with this news. If you're not, I can only look for other news. Chinyu wasn't in the mood to continue listening to his nonsense. However, the last one was considered to be of some value. A true god's inheritance. Perhaps he could take the time to go and take a look. After all, this place had been separated from other places for who knew how many years. There had been no communication. He didn't know if there had been a true god here before, and if there hadn't, What kind of strength did they have? Qin Yu hadn't fought with Xian Tian Shenzhen yet. Hence, he didn't know how big the gap was between him and a true god. Was he still able to take on challenges, or was he slightly inferior? He didn't know. No matter how confident a person was, it was impossible for him to talk about his strength. According to his thoughts, it was better to make a trip. This year, when the inheritance opened, there were still many people at the door. Occasionally, there would be 1 or 2 unfamiliar faces, but definitely not many. Among the unfamiliar faces, most of them were solo practitioners who came to join in the fun. For these people, the people from the big forces didn't welcome nor reject them. Of course, it wasn't like this in the beginning. In the beginning, there was competition. However, after each competition ended, almost no one could get the inheritance. Not to mention the true god's inheritance. However, many people had received 1 or 2 pointers. However, they couldn't get the final inheritance. After a long time, many people's thoughts slowly faded. Since they couldn't get the final inheritance, why should they keep holding it in their hands? It was best for everyone to keep it in check. After a long time, no one got the inheritance. As a result, some thick-skinned solo practitioners who weren't weak could come over to try their luck. However, it was a little different today. Because there was a person who didn't look like a poor solo practitioner. Moreover, he was extremely powerful. Moreover, everyone was very clear about it. A person who could bring about such terrifying pressure was definitely not weak. It might even be beyond their imagination. I'm just here to join in the fun. You guys continue. An expert suddenly came. Although he didn't seem to be much of a threat. It also made the few old guys who kept coming over to try to be vigilant. They estimated the strength of both parties. They realized that they didn't know who would win and who would lose. Because Qin Yu's strength was unfathomable. Because they hadn't fought before, no one was willing to offend him easily. Plus, there were examples of solo practitioners who came in. They continued to open the inheritance, and then slowly waited for the entrance to get bigger. Everyone went in one by one. Qin Yu only went in after he saw that everyone had gone in. He only felt a little dizzy, but the world in front of him was very different. It was similar to the feeling he had every time he crossed the void. Chapter 1083. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. For example, the first thing that came into view in the secret realm was a bubbling swamp. There were also some trees growing beside the swamp. Obviously, there was a dense forest in the distance. But whether it was the swamp or the forest, it was extremely dangerous. Now, it seemed to be calm and peaceful. But every choice around it would affect what kind of danger they would encounter in the future. In the swamp, a pair of eyes would peek out from time to time. Then, they would continue to dive without leaving a trace. There was no trace left on the swamp. Only people with enough strength could detect this slight change. What was surprising was that the place he was standing on was completely empty. There was no danger, and no plants grew. It was just an extremely smooth and calm place. If one walked out of here, there were options of swamp and forest. I heard that the people who came here before found a huge lake, a river, and even the sea after walking out of the swamp. No one knows how big this place is. Be careful, there are countless birds and beasts in the forest, and there are countless disgusting monsters in the swamp. Many people had been here before, especially those who had been here before. Because of their experience, they had an extremely high right to speak among the crowd. At this moment, they explained it one after another. It outlined a world that looked calm on the surface, but was actually filled with danger. Soon, someone took the lead and walked out of this flat open space. When they walked out, they said that the place was dangerous. Some people chose the swamp. But more people chose the forest. Even if there were more dangers in the forest, the swamp was the greatest danger. It was possible to be dragged into the swamp unknowingly and never be able to break free. This was the biggest problem, and even many experts would find it troublesome. The death swamp was not an undeserved reputation. Once someone was trapped, it would be difficult to break free even if they used 10 or 100 times their strength. Even experts were rarely willing to walk through the swamp. Qin Yu closed his eyes and sensed every wisp of breeze in his surroundings, every exquisite detail. In the end, he realized that no matter which path he took, they would all lead to the same destination. It could be understood that no matter where he went, he would return to the same place. As long as he kept walking in one direction, he would be able to reach the same place. This mystic realm was like a huge circle. No matter which way he went, no matter what he went through, he just needed to find a direction and keep moving forward. In the end, they would be able to reach the place where they received the inheritance. As such, Qin Yu did not need to make any choices. He directly walked into the forest. Although the swamp was easy for him, behind the swamp was the sea. Although in terms of danger, the forest was one level higher. But in terms of the degree of trouble, the swamp was even more troublesome. In comparison, there was no need to worry about his strength. There was no need to worry about danger, so why would he bring trouble to himself? After walking out, the people in their respective camps were attacked by many people. However, the beasts all had extremely sharp instincts. No one was willing to make a move on Qin Yu. This was because Qin Yu's strength was very high. Although there were many powerful beasts at the level of Shenzhen, Qin Yu's strength was very high. But he didn't do anything to Qin Yu. Pick the soft persimmon to pinch, let alone these beasts that had their own thoughts. Naturally, they would choose the weaker ones who were easier to deal with. With the help of 2 experts, Yi Zichen was able to escape. There were no casualties. However, they were more or less frightened, and they would only receive protection for such a short period of time. If they left from here and walked a little further, the experts who followed them would only ensure that they wouldn't die easily. But there was no more help at all. It was precisely because of this reason that a group of people from various forces quickly discussed to leave together. Because there was a slightly stronger young talent leading the group. All of this was extremely smooth, and there were no accidents. When the time comes, everyone will be together. If someone gets the opportunity, it will be his own. We must all help each other. Even if we encounter the inheritance, it will be taken by the capable. Everyone knows that this thing depends on luck and fate. Many people have not succeeded. If you succeed, then it should have belonged to you in the first place. Such remarks instantly allowed him to gather a large number of people. They were all willing to listen to his orders and dispatches. The most important thing was that when they were on guard against each other, there was such a person who could give an extremely fair condition. This aroused the yearning of many people. They all felt that perhaps forming a team was a better choice, and the disadvantages after forming a team had been avoided. Why should they be afraid of each other because of this? Even the 2 experts had joined in on the agreement. Principles? The capable will be taken by the capable? If they could really get the inheritance and the opportunity. It was all their own efforts, and it had nothing to do with others at all. It was precisely because of this statement. Many people had completely joined this team. Of course, with everyone together, they could indeed exert a stronger ability. Naive. Forming a team was indeed a very good choice. But the premise was that someone could really keep their promise. Not interfering with each other was often the best in the face of powerful benefits. As for sharing and helping each other, it was nothing in the face of real benefit. These verbal agreements could not be more laughable. But obviously, these inexperienced teenagers all believed it. Not only did they believe this statement, but they also believed it without a doubt. Some people noticed Qin Yu's thoughts, but they only slightly disagreed. On the contrary, the young man who took the lead and wanted to lead seemed to have his tail stepped on at this moment. He stomped his feet in a hurry, as if someone had hit the nail on the head. Let's go. Obviously, if he continued to stay, it would arouse suspicion, and his position would be shaken. As for these foreign scattered people, they have nothing to do with us. Their identities are unknown. It's better for us, who are familiar with each other, to form a team. Soon, these people formed groups of 2s and 3s. Then, they stepped into the forest together. There were only 2 people left in the place. Other than Chinyu, there was a scattered person with a slightly funny face left. If he could live until now and had considerable strength. Obviously, this scattered person was not a simple person. However, compared to those with power and influence, he was just a loner. Those who formed groups originally looked down on scattered people. As the only unspecialized player, he was naturally thrown to the side. But he mistook Chinyu for someone like him. Chapter 1084. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. If you and I travel together, we can avoid a lot of danger. You're so powerful, and I know a lot of techniques. If you and I work together, we can definitely make it to the end and get a lot of good stuff. Snowflake Sanrin looked at Chinyu eagerly, wanting to get a definite answer. He didn't have the ability to stand out among the crowd. He had also heard of the dangers outside. With his ability, he might be able to make it to the end, but he wouldn't be able to get much. If he got into a conflict with those with power, he would be chased out. On the surface, they were allowed to come in. But in reality, there would always be a lot of attacks in the dark. It was because of this that he couldn't wait to find people. Even if there was an extra person, it would be much better than being alone. More importantly, everyone was able to tell that Chinyu was most definitely not an ordinary person. He naturally observed a lot and could tell that Chinyu's ability wasn't low. Even if he couldn't feel it clearly. Looking at how no one dared to provoke Chinyu just now, he could roughly guess a part of Chinyu's ability. But to a Sanrin, it was better to travel together. Chinyu didn't need it. I'll travel alone. Do as you wish. Chinyu was very fast. So, no matter how much Snowflake Sanrin wanted to stop him, he didn't have the ability. He could only watch as Lin Fan disappeared in front of him. He was helpless. But he could only choose a direction to travel in. As for which direction was the right one, it wasn't that important, because the probability of getting the inheritance was too small. For countless years, many people felt that they might be the lucky one. But no one could be the lucky one. In the past, there had been countless famous experts who had come here, overcoming all difficulties along the way. They didn't want anything just for the inheritance. They wanted to know the secret of the true God and break through. But in the end, none of them didn't return empty-handed. There were so many examples that proved that not everyone could get the inheritance just because they wanted it. At the moment, only those who came here for the first time or very few times had hope. If he felt lucky, he might be the lucky one. Of course, all the major forces sent their outstanding people here. The reason was not only because there were many good things here. It was also because there was an inheritance here. Perhaps one of them would be lucky enough to meet the conditions and obtain the inheritance. Even if the possibility of this happening was very, very small. After passing through the forest, they could see a winding river. Then there was lush grass. But just like the countless killers in Linji Forest, there were also ferocious packs of wolves on the grassland. There were also many terrifying existences. This world was like a real world. But in reality, no matter how much it was emulated, it was just a cave abode that was barely opened by a powerful being. Since it was not the real heaven and earth, its range was naturally limited. As a result, a desert appeared not far away from the grassland. Further away, the desert was connected to the sea. It seemed a little absurd. Since there was a sea, why was there a desert beside it? However, it was just like this that they depended on each other and did not interfere with each other. The inheritance of a true god was located in an extremely tall tower. This tower towered into the clouds and looked extremely tall. And the 2 floors below were extremely tall. Only the top was barely normal, and it looked more like it was going up layer by layer. At the top, it was the size of a normal room, and at the bottom, it looked extremely empty. As a test of the inheritance, everyone could step into this place. And now, most people were still working hard in the forest, swamp, and other places. They barely crossed the forest, but they had not arrived here yet. So, there was only Qin Yu in front of the door. After walking in, it was extremely calm, with only the occasional roar. Walking in, he was blocked. The road in front of him suddenly split into 5, each leading to different places. Qin Yu just watched the road split, and then continued to walk toward the middle road without looking sideways. After walking for a long time, his eyes were bright. A huge cage appeared. The height of this cage was even comparable to the roof. One had to know that this house was already extremely tall and huge, and now he saw the existence that lived in it. Only then did he understand why this house was built so big. Because this was the first level, all the testers were like this. An elephant with long tusks and a long trunk, although it looked very cumbersome. But its rough skin was like the most natural armor, and it was almost impossible for swords and spears to penetrate. And its long tusks could easily pierce through a person's body. Its long trunk was very flexible, and it could tightly bind some weak enemies. And its heavy hooves could trample all enemies' bodies. Other than being slightly cumbersome, there was almost no flaw. Unfortunately, this elephant was the most difficult of all the tests. It was also the most powerful beast in all the tests. Those who could stay here, although they seemed to be locked in a cage. But in fact, they also knew their mission and responsibility. They had to stay here for a long time and not leave. As long as they saw outsiders, they would not hesitate to kill the enemy. They would use this to guard the inheritance behind them. The cage opened with a clatter, and a heavy elephant walked over with heavy step. It almost did not give anyone any chance to breathe. But it carried such heavy steps and a strong sense of oppression. Qin Yu's expression did not change. From the beginning to the end, his expression did not change at all from the moment he stepped into this place. There was only eagerness to try. With such a powerful beast that almost had no flaws. Qin Yu had never experienced a good test before. At least a guy like this who almost seemed to have no weaknesses. Before this, he really didn't happen to meet someone who was similar in strength to practice. This is the first level's test? It's more appropriate to say that it's training. This was a giant beast that made countless Senzin's expressions change. In Qin Yu's hands, it only lasted for a while. The thick skin brought a very strong protection. But it was the heavy body that made them lose the flexibility of their bodies. Although the elephant's trunk was extremely long, it was almost flexible enough to tie a knot. But with this point, Qin Yu was the easiest to attack directly. And it was the only weak point that could be seen at a glance. That was the eyes. In addition to the eyes, he could also attack the abdomen. Or he could directly hold a long knife and cut off the elephant's trunk. Chapter 1085. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. The blade slashed down. Compared to the other parts of its body, that long and flexible nose was not so difficult to destroy. But ordinary people wanted to seize the opportunity to cut off this long nose. It was not an easy task. The first and most important requirement was strength. He didn't have powerful strength, nor did he have nimble movements. There was no way to deal with the heavy defense of the elephant. To do all of this, cut off the nose, the elephant almost lost half of its combat strength. But its body was wide, so it could charge at will. It was enough for any expert who was proud of their physical strength to die helplessly with hatred. Qin Yu leaped up with the tip of his foot and stood on the back of the elephant. He stabbed down with his blade. Even his dominating heaven blade could only break through the defense on the surface. And he couldn't kill it in one breath. But if the first slash didn't work, then the second slash. He would add another slash to the same position. No matter how strong it would definitely die. Although it was easy to say, it wasn't that simple. The elephant's body was extremely huge, and a casual step could cause a great shock. Although the room wouldn't shatter because of this, it would keep shaking. And in such an environment, its body was extremely huge. An elephant that was also very heavy. However, he was still able to stand firm and not fall. To be able to win in such an environment with the fastest speed, Qin Yu's strength could be seen. At least if it was anyone else who had also come to the secret realm. They didn't have such strength. It was already good enough that they didn't die at the hands of this giant beast. Of course, it was enough to defeat it, not kill it. As long as one was strong enough, they would be let go after the battle. But it was the same to kill it now. The final result had been settled. When the huge elephant fell helplessly, a door slowly appeared. It seemed to be standing in the void, but as long as the door was opened, one could directly cross it. But all of this was not an illusion, nor was it deliberately mystifying. It was just that there was something profound about it. As long as the door was opened, it was almost equivalent to opening some kind of teleportation array. It could directly teleport to the next place. And the next place was 99% likely to be the next floor. The second floor was slightly smaller, but the beasts here were all giant tigers and cloud leopards crawling on the ground. It would only be more dangerous than the previous elephant. And he would definitely not be any easier to deal with. Each and every one of their movements were extremely nimble. It would definitely not become more cumbersome. Moreover, he was also very powerful. Most importantly, these guys had thick and heavy scales on their bodies. Even if he wanted to cut it off, it was almost impossible. In such a perfect situation, Qin Yu just watched with boredom. Was this beast using the same trick? Although it was a little stronger, it was basically not much different from the previous elephant. Because they were all like that, it was almost impossible to find any flaws. Moreover, they were all beasts and acted based on their instincts. You're all too weak. You don't deserve to be my opponent. Either you send me up, or I'll break through this place. He was able to walk over so easily. Qin Yu couldn't be sure that there was a core of intelligence in each level of the tower. At the very least, he was secretly manipulating everything. Perhaps it was a spirit produced by the pagoda itself, or perhaps it was the soul of a true god expert that was still preserved. Or rather, it was his will. But in any case, there was definitely someone here who could hear him. But after a while, there was still no one who answered him. The test was still as usual. Qin Yu directly began to make his move. He directly catalyzed his strength to the maximum. He didn't care about the beasts that swarmed over from all directions and wanted to swallow him into their stomachs. He directly stepped on the heads of the beasts and stood at the top. Then, he slashed out with his blade, but it was reflected back. But it didn't matter. Even if it was reflected back, it still left a trace. No matter how strong the defense was, it definitely couldn't keep resisting without any conditions. And in the dark, there was a translucent, illusory figure. Feeling the powerful force that came from this attack, he couldn't help but feel a little surprised. When did such a powerful figure appear in the younger generation? If we really let him fight like this, in less than half a day the entire pagoda will be broken. He built the pagoda to let people accept the trial. Once Gao Tang returned, he would have no place to stay at all. He would be so bored that he could only wander around. At that time, he would lose the place he relied on to survive. He was just a slightly stronger soul. He didn't even have the ability to leave this secret realm. However, just as he was thinking about how to solve this problem, Qin Yu had already broken through the thick barrier between the second and third levels. He directly ignored the countless roaring beasts and jumped to the third level. There were no enemies on the third level that constantly wanted to bite. However, there weren't too many beasts with rationality. Instead, there were some puppets that were specially controlled. After these puppets sensed that a stranger had barged in, they all shone with red light. Some of their arms could stretch very long, and some of them could run extremely fast. Some of them had unparalleled strength, and this large circle of puppets swarmed over and could cooperate with each other. It could be seen that these puppets were closely cooperating according to a certain method. Therefore, it was particularly difficult to deal with them. If he wanted to defeat all these puppets, it would definitely not be an easy task. Previously, Qin Yu could easily come here. But now, he couldn't help but feel a little strenuous. After all, there were too many puppets, and they didn't have many weaknesses. It would already take a lot of time to break the formation formed by the puppet, not to mention killing all these puppets one by one. The energy spent could almost exhaust all of a person's strength. Of course, Qin Yu knew that it could consume part of his strength. For others, it was a complete disaster. And he had just broken through to the 3rd level. The test here was definitely not that difficult. That could only be because the existence behind the scenes had realized it. His strength was so powerful that it was irresistible. Therefore, he used this method to try to attack. However, this kind of puppet also had a fatal weakness. As long as these puppets were completely cut off from the outside world, then their energy cores would be destroyed. There would be no more power to resist. Annihilation Thunder. The illusory figure who had been hiding in the dark and watching all of this felt the aura of annihilation. His body was so excited that he was trembling slightly. How many years had it been? He actually saw the Annihilation Thunder again. This was something he had dreamed of. Even now, he still wanted to get it. Chapter 1086. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation in The Thunder World. It was no longer possible to find out just how high the status of the Annihilation Divine Thunder was. All they knew was that only a small number of people could master it. Those who had mastered the Annihilation Divine Lightning. Without exception, all of them were super experts who kept their word. Hierarch Thundercloud had once wanted to master the Annihilation Divine Lightning. However, the power of the Annihilation Divine Lightning was too violent. Since he had failed to master it and was injured, Hierarch Thundercloud could only give up on the idea for now. In the end, he did not have the patience to persist until the end. Most importantly, someone had given him a more docile Divine Lightning at that crucial moment. He now had a more docile and powerful Divine Lightning. He had temporarily given up on something as troublesome as the Annihilation Divine Lightning. However, in the end, everything he had done was wrong. Giving up on the Annihilation Divine Lightning was equivalent to giving up on the endless possibilities in the future. When he truly broke through to the true God realm, he realized that the Annihilation Divine Lightning was not as simple as it seemed. It was a path that was completely incompatible with heaven and earth. Those who mastered the Annihilation Divine Lightning generally dared to go against heaven and earth. In other words, they had the power to go against heaven and earth. It was a pity that he had to wait until he reached his current level. There was no way to master it again. The two types of divine lightning repelled each other. He had accepted other paths and used the previous path to reach his current level. He would never be able to break through the norm. He could only comprehend the power of the world step by step. He could only use gentle means to create everything. In the end, he died unwillingly. His body decayed, but his soul survived. If he wanted to completely get rid of his current state, he could only break through everything. He wanted to see if he could obtain the legendary power of the Annihilation Great Path. Perhaps he could break through the norm that was binding him. Qin Yu felt that there was a power that wanted to pull him into a place. He could guess that it was the person behind the scenes who wanted to do something. He didn't even try to dodge, and just let the other party pull him away. When his eyes lit up, he saw that this place was just like a normal room. This meant that this was the top of the tower. Can you fully control the Annihilation Divine Lightning in your hand? Although this illusory figure was not very powerful, His tone even sounded a little impatient. However, the aura that belonged to a powerhouse, or even a true god powerhouse, he would definitely not mistake it. Qin Yu's expression became slightly more serious. Just now, he was wondering who was the true controller of this place. From the looks of it, he was the true god expert who had never left. However, his current state could not be compared to his peak state. However, it was just an illusory figure. Perhaps there would be a great storm that would completely dissipate. Senior is talking about this? The power of the annihilation divine thunder filled the entire room. The excitement on Ultimate God Thundersky's face could not be concealed. Yes, that's it. How did you completely control the annihilation godly lightning? I was foolish. You naturally have your own way of controlling it. Rashly inquiring about other people's unique skills was an extremely rude and abrupt thing to do. After regaining his senses, Hierarch Thunder Firmament restrained his excitement. If he wanted to get rid of this illusory body, he could only do his best to find all kinds of method. And this time, Qin Yu had allowed him to see a new hope. If he could refine the commemoration divine thunder, he might be able to embark on a new path. It did not matter even if he failed again. After all, as long as he succeeded, he would have a lot more time. Moreover, it was calculated in 100,000 years. After breaking through to the true God realm, he would not have to worry about dying of old age. However, if he could not break through, as a human who had always been relatively weak, there were almost no powerful abilities that could prevent all kinds of accident. Usually, in a long time, there was a high possibility that he would go crazy. Or he might have doubts about the path he was currently on. All of these could cause him to lose his life at any time. In this long period of time, there were too many accidents of all kinds. However, after reaching the true God realm, any accident could lead to extremely serious consequences. As a result, although he had extremely powerful abilities, there were fewer and fewer of them later on. It was precisely because there were a lot of troubles. More and more experts were unwilling to casually release their inheritance and experience. Naturally, he was extremely unwilling to do so. At least in his opinion, it was a waste to embark on such a path. If he really increased his strength and reached the true God realm, except for a few people who were extremely talented and had embarked on the right path. Most people in this world were definitely not on the right path. Just like the annihilation divine thunder that he sighed with emotion just now. Later on, he realized that even if it was only the divine thunder with the same effect, the path of nirvana was also unique. At least, the path that ordinary people took was not suitable at all. They could only become the puppets of heaven and earth. Although it seemed very powerful, after that, they no longer had the ability to improve. Moreover, it was almost obvious. How could they not feel despair? I help you refine your body, then what can you give me? Hierarch Thunder Firmament sat down without hesitation and made a decision. To him, there was nothing more important than regaining a part of his strength. At least, he would be able to see hope in the future regardless of whether it was good or bad. It was not like before when he broke through and discovered a part of the truth of this world. He could only muddle through his days. This was because he knew that no matter how hard he worked, he could not pursue a higher realm. He could only helplessly endure 10,000 years of loneliness. However, because his lifespan was very long, 10,000 years was not enough. His lifespan was calculated in units of 100,000 years. It was not troublesome to live up to 1,000,000 years. However, very few people could really live up to 1,000,000 years. They could always live and not go crazy. I can give you everything that I have now. I spent a lot of time accumulating this. It is somewhat valuable. I see that you are about to break through your strength. I can also tell you a lot of my experience. As long as you want, I can tell you everything that I know and possess. Hierarch Thunder Firmament almost did not care about anything else. He wanted to get out of his current situation too much. At present, he had everything in his hands. In his eyes, it was nothing compared to being able to get out of his current predicament. He could recover a part of his strength and leave this place. He had not seen the outside world for a long time. Chapter 1087. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. The sacred hall, which had been worshipped as a holy land, suddenly collapsed. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, the towering sacred tower that had stood there for 10,000 years began to crumble. Inch by inch, it began to crumble until only a small spire was left. However, it was still impossible to escape. In the end, only an empty space was left. Only a person and a translucent shadow were left behind. However, unlike before, Hierarch Thunder Firmament had recovered a portion of his strength. He was the one who had created the sacred hall earlier. This so-called sacred tower had no other purpose other than to allow people to pass the test. To put it simply, it was just for show. It did not have much use at all. After listening to Qin Yu's advice, he realized that Qin Yu did not need such a decoration at all. He was going to destroy everything. After using the sacred tower to exist for so long, he had long hated this so-called sacred tower. He wanted to destroy it. If not for the fact that he still needed to survive, he would not have stayed in this place for so long. From today onwards, I'm free. This sacred hall is a world that I created after studying for a long time. However, as you can see, it's not perfect. It's very, very complicated to perfect a world. I can only do my best to create mountains and rivers. Of course, he had once wanted to find another way. He wanted to create a more complicated environment. However, the end result proved that his efforts were in vain. Therefore, he only created a nondescript mystic realm instead of a real world. Hierarch Thunder Firmament really did not need these things. After looking at it for so many years, he was already tired of looking at it, no matter how beautiful the scenery was. He was very familiar with every flower, every blade of grass, and every leaf here. He even knew how many leaves there were on each tree. One could only imagine how bored this old man was. Qin Yu did not refuse because he knew very well. It was better to accept it. It was beneficial to both parties. However, the others did not realize that the sacred hall had a new owner. They all came one after another. When they saw Qin Yu in the center of the sacred hall, they all became speechless. At first, they could not help but fall silent. This was because they all recognized Qin Yu. Wasn't that the stranger from before? But even if they recognized him this time, they didn't know what to do. First of all, no one knew where Qin Yu came from. No one knew what Qin Yu had done. It could only be deduced from the collapse of the divine tower. Qin Yu should have received all the inheritances. On the other hand, the other person seemed to have mixed feelings. Those people had been here and had broken into the sanctum. Those who had reached the end and received some pointers were definitely not unfamiliar with this person. Even if it was a translucent shadow, no one would dare to be disrespectful. This was because the entire mystic realm was under his control. He even had a complete inheritance in his hands. That was an inheritance that could allow all of them to reach the heavens in a single bound. This time, the true purpose of these experts was not to explore this place. He wasn't here to try his luck. Instead, they were here to think of a way to make this translucent phantom agree to their request. Pass on the inheritance to them. Even if he had tried many times to no avail. However, they would more or less gain a lot of benefits, so this trip was not in vain. Hence, they came more frequently. However, this year was a little different from the previous years. It was like heaven and earth. The inheritance. Has it been taken by someone? Hierarch Thunder Firmament looked at these slightly familiar faces. After thinking for a long time, he finally remembered who they were. He was really too bored here. Hence, when the mystic realm opened, there were also some people who tried their best to bring him some good things to please him. Of course, it was to take away more valuable things from him. However, he was really too bored. Hence, he was willing to give them some things. It wasn't a lot, and it wasn't very useful to him. However, to these people, it was an incomparable supreme thing. You're wrong. It's not just the inheritance. I told him to give everything I had to him. From now on, there will be no true secret realm. You don't have to come anymore. However, many people couldn't accept this news. They came here again and again for the sake of obtaining a lot of good things. If they couldn't get these benefits from now on, where could they find a similar one to replace them? This was a true God. Previously, they weren't in a hurry. Even if there were times when they couldn't help but want to destroy everything. They didn't destroy anything. Wasn't it just a long-term plan? Anyway, no one else could get it. What if one day, they were lucky enough to let their own people take the inheritance? However, the worst-case scenario still came true. An unknown expert came out of nowhere. He got the inheritance. He even got everything in the mystic realm. The 3 pagoda guards who came this time were actually very powerful. They worked together to target Qin Yu. In the entire Thunder world, the 3 great pagodas worked together and were wary of each other. There were many experts among them. However, there was an unwritten rule in the 3 great pagodas. When there was an external enemy, they had to work together at all costs. All the grudges had to be put aside for the time being. Even if it was a blood feud, they couldn't move a finger. Hence, when facing Qin Yu, who had taken the inheritance and everything closely related to it, all of them joined hands at the same time. They were only prepared to deal with Qin Yu alone. As for the contents of the inheritance, how were they going to divide it? Of course, they would divide it equally. Since an outsider got it, they would capture him and take turns to interrogate him. Whatever they could get out of him would depend on them. Qin Yu stood there motionlessly. He allowed those attacks to land on his body. For the time being, he didn't do anything. The jade pendant made by Divine Master Xian Tian was on him at the moment. These attacks would only fall on him and then be eliminated. Unless these people could stand there and keep attacking at this speed for more than an hour. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to hurt him. As for Qin Yu, who was standing still, he was in fact receiving control of the entire secret realm. Divine Master Lei Xiao had already handed over control of this part to Qin Yu. However, there was always a process of receiving it. Moreover, it was a mystic realm that was created by someone. If they wanted to receive it, they had to understand every inch of it. This would be a very time-consuming thing. Half a day later, those people still didn't stop. However, it was the younger generation who attacked. Chapter 1088. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation Hierarch Thundercloud once had a famous skill called The Sea Turns into Mulberry Fields. Countless changes could happen in an instant, causing countless people to tremble in fear. Very few people knew about this skill of his, and it was extremely difficult to cultivate. He had a sudden inspiration after breaking through to the true God realm and instantly created a foundation. Later on, he kept looking for things to perfect it, and that was how he became famous. It was also his most powerful skill. No one could surpass him. As the saying went, the world changed, and the sea turned into mulberry fields. Nothing could survive the decay of time. Even the entire world would slowly change over the long years. The mountains and rivers in the world. Countless lives. They would also experience changes over the course of countless years. Hierarch Thundercloud's original intention when he created this skill. He wanted to integrate the characteristics of the sea turned into mulberry field. He wanted everyone who needed to be restricted by time. They had no choice but to be restricted by the sea turned into mulberry field. It was a pity that he did not master it. It did have the power of the sea turned into mulberry fields for the weak. However, the effect would be much worse for those who were similar to him. It was enough to deal with ordinary people, and the things in the divine pagoda before were often created by him using this unique skill. It was slightly different from real life. However, it was enough for him to use on a daily basis. Hierarch Thundercloud did not appear for a long time. He had long forgotten what the people outside were like. Therefore, he was the most shocked when the countless attacks came. Fortunately, Qin Yu had been standing at his original place the entire time without being injured in the slightest. However, he knew that this was not a long-term solution. He was about to change the environment of the secret realm. He wanted to use the countless beasts he created to resist the fearless actions of these people. However, he was extremely shocked when he made his move. Even though he had an incorporeal body, a few drops of cold sweat appeared on his head. He had lost control of the secret realm that he had created with his own hand. His control over the secret realm had not completely disappeared. However, it was indeed losing a lot. As a result, he could only stand there helplessly. Even if he wanted to mobilize the power, he could only mobilize a small part of it. At this rate, the power he mobilized had not arrived yet. He was afraid that the power would be out of his control. In other words, he could only watch it all happen. However, he was no longer worried at all. Instead, it was a complicated feeling. I didn't expect this. I didn't expect this. In this declining era, there is actually such a talented person who has surpassed everyone. Hierarch Thundercloud, of course, was aware that the most powerful person in the outside world was censored. He was Thundercloud translation. Therefore, he did not know that someone had broken through the true God realm for the past 10,000 years. However, there was one thing that had not. In Thundercloud in his eyes. 1,000,000 years in the prosperous age. 1,000,000 years. In every God realm there was a genuine true God. God is his realm with that was Shinran? That. Some prosperous sacred grounds even had 2 or 3 true gods overseeing them. Thundercloud fields was. In Thundercloud sky, he tree in. It in such times in fields in places in such a place. There, even heaven that, in the even. Appeared. Was a no was a that person. That was to Cloud Qin Yu was still standing in the same place. He did not move at all. However, none of the attacks that came from all directions were able to harm him at all. All the power that fell on him dissipated. At this moment the entire secret realm trembled slightly. Only a few people could feel this slight tremor. However, because their attention had already landed on Qin Yu's expression changed drastically. Naturally, they didn't notice this slight change. It was because they did not notice this slight change. This caused the distance between the two sides to widen. Tall trees instantly grew to the sky. Countless lakes spread up to their ankles. The creatures in the swamp opened their eyes and escaped. The densely packed poisonous creatures in the desert were all heading in one direction. In the empty sky, rolling thunderclouds appeared. Nobody knew when it started, but the wind was getting stronger. The wind blew sand and made people's faces hurt. There were only a few people who could sense the impending storm. As for the rest of the younger generation, they were completely oblivious to all of this. Until the crisis came. All those who dared to provoke him were turned into dust. He stepped on a giant crocodile and endured countless lightning bolts. Everything around him was his power. Just ask. Who else? No one dared to continue at this juncture. The 3 guards even directly gave up on those outstanding disciples. Of course, there was no one for them to save at this moment. Those who could die should die. Those who were weak. Basically, none of them were left. Of all the people who had attacked him, only the 3 great guardians were left. However, there was only one left who was lucky enough to escape. It was the lone cultivator who had extended an olive branch to him back then. It was just that this lone cultivator was excluded, so he did not make a move. At this moment, He was lucky enough to escape. He avoided this life and death calamity. However, the 3 guards seemed to be lucky enough to avoid it. In fact, there was still countless pain waiting for them. Ah! He has the power of the entire secret realm. Let's go. At this moment, everyone had to avoid the sharpness and restrain their movements. However, how could a prey that had been targeted so easily escape? Obviously, it was impossible. A branch suddenly flew over from nowhere. A cloud drifted over from afar. A piece of soil under one's feet became the most fatal stumbling block. This was the power of creation. It was also the power that intoxicated everyone. It was the power that could control everything. A dark light flashed in Qin Yu's eyes. His heart was boiling with killing intent. Finally, from 1,000 miles away, he clenched his fist. A few people instantly exploded, as if they had been squeezed to death. Such a powerful force, such a terrifying might. No one could resist it. However, most of them were already dead. But after receiving such a huge power and the accumulation of countless years by an old monster, this was just the beginning. If he could not vent it out and find a balance point of power, he would be lost in this huge power. At this moment, several rays of light flashed across his body. The 7 Shinran gods were constantly devouring the excess power. Because of this, the dragon soul beside Qin Yu also obtained an enormous increase in strength. It was only one step away from becoming a true god. Divine Master Thundersky's jaw almost dropped. They watched helplessly as Qin Yu forcibly suppressed the opportunity to break through. He dared to guarantee that although he had lived for hundreds of thousands of years, he had never seen such a special situation. Chapter 1089. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. There were actually people in this world. They were able to suppress the breakthrough opportunity with their own strength. Even if their strength was so vigorous that it almost broke their meridians, they could casually release a portion of their strength. It would lead to the tragic deaths of countless people in this world. However, such majestic strength was still able to be suppressed. However, he was still able to be forcefully suppressed by someone, leaving nothing behind. How shocking and terrifying was this! When Qin Yu completely woke up, everything was settled, and the explosive power in his body did not remain. Instead, it was extremely calm, as if everything had turned peaceful. The excess tyrannical strength was all absorbed by Shinran. The excess gentle strength was all absorbed by the dragon's soul. He himself returned to the realm of perfection. Other than receiving the inheritance of a true god, he did not receive any other improvements. However, it was definitely not a good time to break through. There were endless mysteries above the true god realm. After reaching the true god realm, countless people failed. Even if they reached the true god realm, they would still be bound by a fatal restriction. How could one safely reach the true god realm and break through the rules to become a true god, without being bound by any rules or restrictions? That was what he was thinking. How did you do it? Honorable God Thundersky could not figure it out. Take Qin Yu for example. It was because he had too much strength. Those who had no choice but to forcefully break through were already blessed by the heavens. Once they broke through, they would have more strength than ordinary true gods. However, there were also certain drawbacks. Such a breakthrough was almost passive. One would often be under a certain amount of pressure. However, what did he see today? He saw Qin Yu being squeezed by a powerful force to the point that he was about to explode. However, he was able to forcefully transform that power. He did not know where it was diverted to, but it returned to its original realm. It was simply unbelievable. It also made him wonder what kind of background Qin Yu had. How could he be so powerful? I can only break through if I am willing. If I am not willing, I will not break through even if the power of the heavens and earth is on me. This inexplicable strength from the inheritance wanted to ruin his plan. Was there really such a simple thing in this world to let him break through? If he was unwilling, even if he used more strength, he would not be able to break through. Since that was the case, there was nothing more to say. However, such a simple sentence confused Hierarch Thundersky. If he had the same confidence back then, he would be able to look down on the world with disdain. Would he not be bound and trapped by heaven and earth? Would he not be able to move forward? It was precisely because he was a person who had experienced many things. Therefore, he knew how terrifying Qin Yu's actions were. Although he had been suppressing his breakthrough, he still hadn't broken through. But if he really achieved perfection and then broke through, he would definitely be able to break the rules that countless of them had failed to break. If he could really go against the heavens and earth, he would definitely be able to break through the restraints of the heavens and earth. No. By that time, Qin Yu would have dared to go against the heavens and the earth. Naturally, he didn't have to take the initiative to be restrained by the world. The shackles that had always been on their bodies would never appear on Qin Yu's body. At least after this incident, Qin Yu would no longer be like them. Furthermore, he would not walk down their old path. From now on, he could see how brilliant Qin Yu's future would be. How would he be able to obtain abilities that were more powerful than those of them who had lived in the golden age of millions of years ago? I hope you can succeed. Hierarch Thundersky hesitated for a moment, but in the end, he took out the item that he had been keeping. The vicissitudes of time was indeed his unique skill that made him famous. He had already used this unique skill. However, very few people knew that he had an absolute treasure in his hand. It was called the River and Mountain Painting. The painting contained mountains and rivers, countless independent worlds of their own. Of course, it did not count as a world. Just like the secret realm, it was a world created by an almighty. However, after many years of evolution, it had become a world filled with spiritual aura. Speaking of which, it had other uses. At the very least, he had left behind many accidental inspirations in it. The mountains and rivers in it were also very useful for perfecting the vicissitudes of time. If news of this item were to leak out, countless people would scramble for it even if it was in his time. I'll give this painting to you, but I think you won't be able to use it soon. Given your speed, you might be able to find your way in 8 or 10 years. 8 or 10 years. Qin Yu smiled. He accepted this good intention of his. It took less than a year to go from Heaven Immortal to Shenzhen. I don't think it will take any longer than that. Hierarch Thundersky's first reaction was that he had been deceived. He had broken through so many realms in just a year. He felt that it was a joke. However, he really couldn't see any signs of lying. An absurd thought emerged from the bottom of his heart. Could it all be true? Qin Yu had really broken through so many realms in just a year. If he had not suppressed it earlier, he had gone from the lowest heaven immortal to the most powerful true god in the world in just a year. This was simply absurd to him. Was he crazy or was the world crazy? Or perhaps it could be said that Qin Yu was the only one who was so special, such an exception. Sure enough, the latter was more acceptable. In the end, Qin Yu only said his goodbyes and left. His purpose for coming here was to find the Thunder Dragon God. It would be a waste of time if he stayed here for too long. Moreover, Hierarch Thundersky had almost recovered a part of his strength. Even if he lost the secret realm, he could still go out alone and go to many places. However, Hierarch Thundersky heard that Qin Yu had been alone for such a short period of time. He had become so powerful in such a short period of time. Therefore, he was unwilling to leave so easily. His intuition told him that he might follow Qin Yu. He would be able to come to the conclusion that he had always thought highly of. Anyway, it would only take him a year at most. Qin Yu's potential was not limited to just breaking through in a year. He should have even more potential and even greater strength. For example, he should find his own breakthrough method in a shorter period of time. He should find the right path, that he had been pursuing all his life. Qin Yu shook his head and refused. A hierarch was very powerful even if he only had half of his strength. However, he had lived for a long time. There were many things that he knew. However, it was too troublesome for him to bring his body with him now. It was an irresponsible decision for both sides. It would be better for them to go their separate ways. Chapter 1090. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. How could a void hybrid be carried around? Otherwise, one would have to find a special container to carry around. That special container could be used as a temporary residence. However, such a special container was hard to come by. Very few people would do such a thing. They could only be used to store the souls of their ancestors. Usually, no one would do such a thankless task. In the past, the ancestors were extremely powerful, so many people did such a thing. Later on, there were fewer and fewer experts, so special containers naturally declined. Hierarch Thunder Firmament racked his brains and finally thought of a way. Among the three great divine towers, the Black Phoenix Divine Tower had once inherited a part of the ancient soul nurturing method. Although it was not valued much anymore, there must be a container inside that could store souls. At least, it could let him follow Qin Yu temporarily. In fact, he did not ask for much, but there was one thing. He had to bring him along. He did not want to be constrained by any method. He just wanted to see what would happen to Qin Yu in the future. Moreover, he only had one successor. He wanted to use this opportunity to go out and see the outside world. This matter was troublesome to talk about, but it would only take a little time. Later on, Hierarch Thunder Firmament mentioned that Dark Shinran had paid attention to the Black Phoenix Divine Tower. He could use this point to not delay Qin Yu's matter. In this way, it would be a better way to have the best of both worlds. What he wanted was the simplest container to store a hybrid. It was fine as long as he could live in it temporarily. Even if it was simple and crude, it was fine. Qin Yu did not reply, but he allowed Hierarch Thunder Firmament to squat beside him. Although there was no container that could be used to store souls for the time being. However, he could only use a secret method to make something that could temporarily store souls for a day or two. It was not too difficult. He just needed to use something unique to the Dark Realm. As for Qin Yu, he had indeed gone there. Furthermore, he had obtained quite a bit of harvest. There were many things in the Dark Shenron's collection that he had not touched. However, the remaining part just happened to satisfy this condition. In that case, there was nothing more to say. Hierarch Thunder Firmament turned into a gray light and entered a pearl. It was one of the beads in the bracelet. If one looked carefully, they would be able to see that. That bead was slightly different from the other beads. Its color was darker. The Black Phoenix Divine Tower was one of the three great divine towers. Many people had seen it with their own eyes. There were also some who had been guarding outside the secret realm all year round. Therefore, when the secret realm closed and only one unaffiliated person came out, it attracted the attention of the three great divine towers. Although the Black Phoenix Divine Tower was not the strongest of the three great divine towers, it was still very powerful. It also had the longest history. The Black Phoenix Divine Tower had found the existence of Hierarch Thunder Firmament in some old record. This made many people believe in the inheritance of a true god without a doubt. But now that such a big change had occurred, the Black Phoenix Divine Tower was also the one that paid the most attention to it. Back then, it was their people who went to confirm it, and it was also their people who accidentally leaked the news. From then on, the inheritance of a true god became something that could be shared. Now, someone had obtained the inheritance. Did that mean that they could use force to snatch it? As for that unaffiliated person's words, no one cared at all. How was it possible for a single person to kill all of them so easily? Moreover, that person had not broken through to the true God realm. Perhaps only a true god at his peak would be able to kill the three guardians so easily. But it was impossible for someone at the Senzen realm to do so, unless that person was a one-of-a-kind monstrous genius with peerless talent. In their eyes, that person was just an unaffiliated person. Because he was ignorant and had been greatly frightened, he had spoken without thinking. He had exaggerated his words. It was only because he had been greatly frightened. Therefore, those words had no value at all. Why did the three great divine towers attack at the same time? Recently, many people have been in a hurry. I heard that something happened in the true God realm. None of the people sent by the three great divine towers survived. Only an unaffiliated person survived. The people of the three great divine towers are all dead. Who on earth is so powerful? Qin Yu walked past these people. Now, he was within the range of the Black Phoenix divine tower. These few days, the incident in the secret realm could not be concealed. These days, many people in the heavenly thunder realm were talking about it. There were many guesses about the identity of the mysterious expert, and many discussions broke out. Some people even guessed that someone had deliberately planned all of this. It was for some kind of conspiracy, such as a conspiracy against the three great divine towers. Black Phoenix Senzen was the tower master of the God Sealing Tower. Of course, being the tower master was not a big deal. Small matters were decided by him. It was just that when something big happened, he would take action to resolve it. He had to deal with all the messes while he was at it. Inside the divine tower, he was not the only one who could make the decisions. Only he had the power to defeat the other pagoda masters. He had obtained the glory of being called Black Phoenix. You still haven't found out the origin of that person? Could it be that that person really appeared out of thin air? I told you to investigate that person's background, but you only found out that he directly appeared on the street. What kind of origin is that? The people below all lowered their heads and did not speak. Indeed, this statement did not seem to be able to convince the public. Even they themselves were wondering how a person could appear out of thin air, unless he came from somewhere else. But no matter what, with such strength and the ability to travel, it did not seem like it was his first time here. Moreover, their Thunder Realm had long lost contact with the outside world. Therefore, they did not think of the real answer at first. Even if someone thought of it, they would quickly deny it. It had been a long time since someone came to their side. Why would someone suddenly come to their side and enter the mystic realm? It was such a coincidence that he obtained the inheritance the moment he arrived. But they did not expect that what they overlooked was the truth of the matter. Black Phoenix Senzen did not want to be entangled in this matter for too long. It was just that they could not find the person, which meant that a true god's inheritance was leaked just like that. But now they did not have the ability to get it all back. That was the inheritance of a true god. Didn't he want to get this inheritance himself? Moreover, if they could get the contents of the inheritance from Qin Yu, perhaps there would be more people who would know. At that time, not only them, but others could also take this opportunity. Take a look at the wider world. The Black Phoenix Divine Tower would definitely be able to stand at the top of the world. It had the strength that no one could resist. Chapter 1091. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. The towering divine pagodas were the world's greatest powers. There were 3 divine pagodas in the Thunder Realm. Most people were full of respect for the 3 divine halls. As for the other smaller powers, they were practically non-existent. The entire world was divided into 3, and everyone occupied their own space. They had never crossed over. The lowest level of the divine pagodas was extremely vast. It could contain countless shops and allow outsiders to enter. However, anyone who wanted to enter had to pay a deposit. The deposit was extremely high. Although the deposit had to be returned, it was not something that anyone could take out. Because of this, many people did not have the means to come and take a look. even if they did not lack money. They did not have the ability to enter and exit this place so easily. They could enter and exit as they wished. Only the internal members of the divine pagodas had such authority. Perhaps there is a box inside that can be used to store souls. However, that was a long time ago. I only heard someone mention it by chance. Now, given how little attention you all have placed on it, I'm not sure if we can find it here. Hierarch Thunder Firmament was living quite comfortably. His aura was calm and gentle. Unfortunately, each pearl could only allow him to stay in it for 2 or 3 days. If he wanted to continue looking for a place to rely on, he could only use a portion of the materials to make the other pearls into a place that was suitable for him in the beginning. Only pearls made of special materials could temporarily accommodate him. After accommodating him, the pearls would turn into powder. There were over a dozen pearls on the bracelet. However, all of them could only allow him to stay in it for slightly more than a month. Therefore, it could only be a temporary prop. It could not allow him to stay in it for long. Moreover, refining the pearls and modifying the bracelet was an extremely troublesome matter. Therefore, it was better to find a permanent one. It would be more convenient and faster. There was a hubbub of voices all around. However, Hierarch Thunder Firmament's voice directly entered Qin Yu's mind. In the beginning, this box was specially used to store souls. It was very important. Many old monsters who had died liked to live in it and think of ways to resurrect themselves. However, the outside world changed more and more. Anyway, there are very few people who can use this box now. Other than an old man like me, there are only some special circumstances that can be stored in special boxes. Hierarch Thunder Firmament did not receive any response. Other than Qin Yu, no one else would be able to hear his voice. Unless he changed his mind and wanted the others to hear his voice. When one reached the true God realm, they could even do whatever they wanted under the circumstances where the rules permitted. You can do whatever you want, just slightly change the direction of the sound. No one else could hear his voice. This was definitely not a troublesome matter. It was as if it had been carved into his bones since he was born. Everything was done in a smooth and natural manner. Walking along the bustling ground floor, there were indeed many shops selling all kinds of things. There was also a free trade area, and the things in the market were even more complicated. He might be able to pick up some scraps, or he might be able to buy a bunch of money-losing goods. All in all, everyone had their own methods. It was just a matter of who was better. Qin Yu looked straight ahead and was not disturbed at all. He walked directly to the tallest and most prosperous shop. This was the most dazzling place. Almost casually looking around, one could see that this shop was very different from other shops. The guards stationed here weren't very excited either. It was as if they were used to it. They were wearing the standard uniform of the Black Phoenix Divine Tower. They were at least inner disciples of the Divine Tower. The shop guarded by these inner disciples was definitely not that simple. Perhaps this was the only place where the thing he wanted could be found. I'm looking for a tool that can house a soul. It's best to carry it with you. It's small and has no side effects. Some people who were dozing off heard this. After racking their brains for a long time, they could only give a helpless answer in the end. They did not know what it was. At least, they had never heard of it before. Maybe you can try to go to a higher level. I don't know what you're talking about. Does the soul have to be carefully stored? Generally speaking, the soul would dissipate directly. Otherwise, it would remain as pure soul power without any rationality. The latter could be collected by some people alone and become a kind of energy that could be used. So until now there were fewer and fewer elders, and the number of souls of powerhouses in the world was also decreasing. Most people did not know that powerhouses could live on in such a way. So it was normal that they did not know. Then how can I go up? Qin Yu was not from here. If he was checked, some people might be able to recognize who he was. After all, there was a lone cultivator who had escaped. With that lone cultivator's strength, he had completely recorded his appearance. It was definitely not a troublesome thing. Of course, there must be very few people who knew what he looked like. Otherwise, he would have been stopped when he first stepped in. The Black Phoenix Senzen had a headache for a long time because of the previous secret realm. Because they could not find the person. It was as if everything was just an illusion. If this went on for a long time, it would have a very bad impact on the reputation of the three great divine towers. However, at this moment, someone suddenly walked over with a panicked expression and told them that they had found the person. And it was inside their divine tower. That person was now at the bottom level, although there was no excessive behavior. But when they thought about how many people they sent out back then, none of them came back alive. The person who sent the message felt his scalp tingle. He was worried that Qin Yu would take action and tear down their tower in one breath. The Black Phoenix Senzen was indeed very surprised, but more than that, he was happy. Now that he had found the person, and the person had come knocking on his door. There was simply nothing better than this. Even the depression of not being able to find the other party's trace for so many days. He had completely disappeared without a trace. What are you still standing here for? Hurry up and gather all the powerhouses. Gather all the tower masters. The news spread very quickly, and the order had been transmitted everywhere in an instant. The tower master of the first floor was like a gust of wind, and he quickly arrived at the place where Qin Yu was. That little disciple was still explaining to Qin Yu all the things that he had at hand. Because Qin Yu casually gave him 10 purple coins. At this moment, he was extremely enthusiastic. Whether it succeeded or not, he had an income. Chapter 1092. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation Pagoda Master Gu Shu. The disciple was so scared that his legs went soft. He immediately called him Pagoda Master while trembling. However, Pagoda Master Gu Shu's attention was not on the disciple at all. Instead, he looked at Qin Yu with extreme vigilance. What are you doing here? You've already killed Lin Guang. I don't believe that you've come to the Black Phoenix Divine Tower just to take a look. Qin Yu was not surprised that Pagoda Master Gu Shu was so hostile. That made sense. Previously, his hands were stained with the blood of the people sent by the Black Phoenix Divine Tower. Although that was because Wu Fengshen had taken the initiative to attack. However, ordinary people would not be able to guess his true purpose for coming here. The disciple looked at this domineering scene. He was so scared that he did not dare to speak lightly. Soon, the other pagoda masters arrived as well. As for Venerable Black Phoenix, she was the strongest and had the most authority among them. So many experts had gathered together. Many of them were big shots who could only be seen once many years ago. Some people quickly recognized the identities and origins of these people. However, it was precisely because they recognized them that they did not know what was going on. All the pagoda masters had come. There were as many pagoda masters as there were on each floor. Of course, the higher the ranking of the pagoda masters, the more powerful and influential they were. However, most people only knew Pagoda Master Gu Shu, who was on the lowest floor. They knew very little about the big shots on the upper floors. However, looking at such a big lineup, they could guess a thing or two. Divine Venerable Thunder Firmament suddenly felt an aura that could contain his item. He looked around and saw an extremely small pendant on the Black Phoenix Pagoda Master's body. It wasn't that exaggerated, and it looked very ordinary. However, there were traces of time on it. Based on his experience, he could tell that this was an unremarkable pendant. It had been passed down for at least 200,000 years. What are you doing here? No matter what you want to do, this is not a place you can easily step into. You've already killed a member of my Black Phoenix Divine Tower for no reason. It seems that you've walked right into the trap. Black Phoenix Senzen talked to himself and soon came to a conclusion about this matter. He didn't care if the others could accept it or not. Anyway, he needed a reason that would allow him to directly make a move on Chinyu. If this was the second level or some other place, he didn't know how to say a bunch of nonsense. However, this was the first level after all, and there were many eyes and ears. Even he had to make some preparations first. Otherwise, some people might be dissatisfied with him. At that time, it would definitely not be what he wanted to see. However, now that he had spoken, Black Phoenix Senzin ordered his men to take action. Chinyu felt a little helpless. Originally, he wanted to come here to make a deal and exchange for something suitable. However, these people started to fight with him without saying a single word. It was truly unreasonable. The dominating heaven blade appeared in his hand and spun around his finger. Then, his speed became faster and faster, and before those people's attacks reached him, it was so fast that even his afterimage could not be seen. It was as if there was nothing in his hands. Who said that a saber could only be used for slashing? Now, he was using it as a boomerang. It seemed to be a good choice. The dominating heaven blade had completely submitted to him and was connected to his mind. It was also extremely obedient. Even if he threw it out, he could guarantee that no innocent people would be hurt. And the blade was already extremely fast because of the high-speed rotation. Even if a person's throat was cut in an instant, the wound would not even bleed. Because it was so fast, there was not even a chance for blood to flow out. Even if Tower Master Gu Shu was at the lowest level, his throat was quickly cut. He could not be killed in the blink of an eye. After all, Chinyu still held back a little and did not directly cut off his head. Therefore, even if he was seriously injured, even if his windpipe was cut, and he could not even make a sound, he would not die on the spot. For a moment, Black Phoenix Senzin hurriedly settled these injured people. He was a little afraid of breaking the vases. Now, most of the people on his side were injured. This was only the first time Chinyu had made a move. Obviously, if it happened a few more times, no one would be able to hold on. Even he himself would probably end up the same way. This time, he asked sincerely, "Who are you? What are you doing here?" Chinyu did not take this matter seriously. He ignored Black Phoenix Senzin's vigilant gaze and finally focused his attention on the small pendant. "I just want to take something from you." Black Phoenix Senzin did not want to agree. This was one of the first-generation inheritance items. He was not too sure what was inside this pendant. But this was a symbol of his status, and it had been passed down from generation to generation. It was obviously useful. Every inheritor would receive a stern warning. This pendant was very important. It was the same as the other inheritance items. They were all things that had been used by a true god powerhouse. Who did not know how powerful a true god powerhouse was? These things might have some kind of miraculous effect. Giving it to an outsider for free was not only a trampling on his face. It was also equivalent to the entire Black Phoenix Divine Tower admitting defeat. It's your choice whether to give it or not. If you don't give it to me, I'll kill you. Chinyu was calm as if he was saying that the weather was good today. It was because of this calmness and the strength revealed in this calmness. Black Phoenix Senzin directly raised the red sword in his hand. The pendant that had been passed down was hanging on it. "You want to take it from me? You'd better wait until you win." Black Phoenix Senzin secretly gave the others a look. This look was extremely hidden. The injured pagoda masters quietly changed their positions. But just as the last person was about to return to his position, a stone suddenly appeared out of nowhere. It landed in the position that he originally wanted to occupy, and it was deeply embedded in the floor tiles. With this stone, the formation was in chaos, and they could no longer form the fiend god-killing formation. Chinyu withdrew his hand. This time, he was serious about fighting Black Phoenix Senzin. The strength of the two sides was not on the same level. Black Phoenix Senzin was having a hard time holding on. seeing that the killing formation that he had painstakingly prepared could not be formed. For a moment, he actually felt resentful. But Qin Yu was faster than him. And fiercer. It was a simple hack and a flick. He flew directly to the upper level uncontrollably. He crashed through the thick bricks. Layer by layer, he crashed into the wall until the force was completely neutralized. Then, his whole body continued to fall. The Black Phoenix Divine Pagoda had several large holes in its interior. Even Black Phoenix Senzen's life and death were unknown. Chapter 1093. After the smoke of gunpowder, Qin Yu walked in front of the Black Phoenix Tower Master. The Black Phoenix Tower Master looked on in despair. He directly took the small pendant into his hand. There was a very weak soul sleeping in the pendant. Without hesitation, Hierarch Thunder Firmament destroyed the soul within the pendant. There were too many of such incidents. Naturally, he didn't hold back in the slightest. Wanting to revive in this era was as difficult as ascending to the heavens. It would be better for him to die cleanly, and at least he could provide a seat for him. The Black Phoenix Divine Tower will definitely not let you off. I definitely won't let him off. After saying that, the Black Phoenix Tower Master spat out another mouthful of blood. He did not know why his injuries had suddenly worsened. However, he could feel that someone was targeting him at that moment. However, he didn't know who was targeting him. Hierarch Thunder Firmament snorted disdainfully. Normally, he wouldn't bother to deal with such a small fry. But there was nothing he could do about it. This guy was really a hindrance. It was originally just a small pendant, but he just had to make a fuss about it. Naturally, he couldn't be blamed for being ruthless. In the past, their methods were much crueler than now. Letting the enemy go was tantamount to not being responsible for one's own life. It might even lead to a fatal disaster in the future. Therefore, Hierarch Thunder Firmament had mercilessly crippled that person. He knew that the current Black Phoenix Tower Master was still the same person. But when they met again, it would definitely be a different person. The enemy of our enemy is our friend. Although he wasn't prepared to do so, the next person to seize the Black Phoenix Pagoda Master's position would be the next. More or less, they would no longer pursue them. After all, if he could cripple the Black Phoenix Tower Master, he could cripple a second, a third, and countless others. The Black Phoenix Tower Master's face was pale. When he felt that his strength had greatly decreased, his face was as white as snow. He couldn't believe that he was facing such a situation. With the enemies he had provoked in the past, there was no way he would be able to continue in this position. No one could accept that there was a piece of trash who would become everyone's leader. Those who were originally only ranked below him would seize this opportunity to climb up even more. Qin Yu remained silent about all this. He had achieved his goal of coming here. As for the others, what did it have to do with him? Thunder, thunder, Shinran. Hierarch Thunder Firmament quickly recalled what he had said. He had said that thunder, thunder, thunder Shinran was somewhat related to the Black Phoenix Divine Tower. If it weren't for this sentence, Qin Yu would never have come over to help him like this. Because to Qin Yu, wearing it was something that he could do without. On the contrary, he wanted to know how far Qin Yu would go in the end. Therefore, he had been begging Qin Yu to bring him along. Now, it had become his weakness. I'll take you there. To be honest, I have some clues. As long as you trust me, I can take you there now. Although Hierarch Thunder Firmament had made a solemn vow, he was soon slapped in the face. Tai Lei Shenren's tracks were very difficult to find. Originally, with his method, he should have been able to find him. However, to his shock, no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't find him. Even with such a method, he still couldn't find any trace of Thunder Shenron. However, this shouldn't be the case. Usually, Thunder Shenron's foothold would be his foothold for a long time. There was absolutely no possibility that Thunder Shenron's foothold would not be a foothold. Hierarch Thunder Firmament was extremely shocked and checked again. This time, he even added a part of his life essence. But in the end, the results of the investigation only vaguely told him that the Thunder Shenlong should be here. However, he didn't have an accurate location. Moreover, he had made such a big movement just now and used his life essence as a hierarch to check. Thunder Shenron would definitely be able to find him. In other words, they should have been discovered long ago. However, there was no trace of Thunder Shenron anywhere. It was so ridiculous that it made his scalp tingle. Qin Yu was able to guess what exactly had happened. It was nothing more than what he had done before had long been known. Thunder Shenron wanted to resist. However, could he really succeed in resisting so easily? All resistance was futile in front of him. However, Hierarch Thunder Firmament couldn't understand this matter. In his impression, Thunder Shenron would never be afraid. Not to mention that he had hidden himself tightly out of fear just so that no one would be able to find him. In his opinion, it was a little ridiculous. Previously, he would have taken it as a joke, but now he had to ponder. Why was Thunder Shenron unwilling to come out to meet them? Was it because it was inconvenient for him to come out now because of something important? However, he didn't expect that it wasn't inconvenient for him to come out, but that he didn't dare to come out because of fear. Thunder Shenron, are you coming out of your own accord, or do you want me to find you? I don't want them to do it, so I've decided to do it myself. However, you should be able to feel that with my current strength, I have the ability to compete with you. Ridiculous. He forcibly suppressed his breakthrough. Of course, he already had the ability to easily find Thunder Shenron. Now, he even had the strength to compare with Thunder Shenron. Even if he directly competed with him in strength, he might not necessarily lose. What's more, hiding like this, in the end, it would only cause Thunder Shenron to lose all the initiative. Thunder Divine Dragon Tai Lei had obviously thought of this as well, so he was extremely unwilling to come out. Even if he came out, he would only show his head and tail. Sure enough, he was still in this place, at the top of the vast lake. The thick thunderclouds kept rolling and churning. Occasionally, the head and tail were already extremely shocking. As soon as Thunder Shenron appeared, he spoke with a hint of compromise. I don't have much connection with the outside world, I just want to stay here. I don't want to do anything. As long as you're willing to leave, I think we can still maintain friendship and peace. Hierarch Thunder Firmament's jaw almost dropped. However, at the last moment, he remembered that he didn't have a chin now. Therefore, he didn't say that his chin dropped. There was no way to hide his shock. Did he hear wrongly? Thunder Shenron actually wanted to compromise? Every Shenron had his own pride. Usually, even if he knew that he might lose, he wouldn't bow down. It was absolutely impossible for him to lower his head and admit defeat, or even show signs of compromising. However, Qin Yu had done it. He had done something he didn't even dare to think about. Chapter 1094. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation Peaceful Coexistence? It was not completely impossible. Thunder Shenron was pleasantly surprised to hear such a statement. Don't be happy too early. I want a drop of your blood essence. It was self-evident how important blood essence was to Shenron. He was not sure if Qin Yu would let him go if he took out his blood essence. He had the ability and confidence to say that he dared to fight against Qin Yu. He believed that there should not be much difference in strength between the two sides, even though Qin Yu was able to stand at the very top so easily. After all, he knew very little about Qin Yu's past. He was optimistic that he might be able to support Qin Yu alone. However, what worried Thunder Shenron the most was not that Qin Yu might defeat him. It was that Qin Yu still had a few Shenron loyal to him. He was not sure how many he could withstand. You have to know how important blood essence is to every dragon. That's why I won't give it to you easily. Divine Master Thundercloud breathed a sigh of relief when he heard this. This was how Shenron should be in his impression. However, he soon saw an incredible scene. Thunder Shenron continued. You have to promise that you won't trouble me again. I can turn a blind eye to it. I just want to live my own life without being disturbed. The other Shenron could not help but show a little pity. However, no one would kindly remind Thunder Shenron how good it was to be by Qin Yu's side. One less trouble would be one less trouble. If more and more Shenron knew about Qin Yu's hidden value, when that time came, they would not be able to get a share of the pie. Although it was a lot now, they could not wait for Thunder Shenron and Light Shenron to fail to recognize Mount Tai. Qin Yu agreed. He really did not care about Shenron's fighting strength. His own strength was already comparable to Shenron's strength. He only wanted to increase his own strength, instead of using external items to increase his strength. This so-called foreign object naturally included Shenron. Seeing that Qin Yu had agreed, the Grand Thunder Divine Dragon finally heaved a sigh of relief. Then, he handed over a drop of his blood essence without hesitation. Shenron, which had been extremely large, suddenly became sluggish. It was obvious that this was extremely damaging to him. Hierarch Thunder Firmament could not help but restrain himself a little. He reflected on whether his previous attitude towards Qin Yu had been too casual. To be able to make Shenron, which was famous for its strength, so fearful. He was even willing to take out a drop of blood essence as a sign of his sincerity. It was conceivable that Qin Yu was many times more powerful than he had imagined. This is too unbelievable. How did you do it? After some thought, Hierarch Thunder Firmament decided not to hide his changes. Because he knew that he could not hide it at all. He might as well just say it out loud like this. Perhaps Qin Yu could really answer his doubts. Hierarch Thunder Firmament was currently living in a small pendant. However, he was still very sensitive to the outside world. When the aura of the 7 great Shenron appeared, it directly suppressed him to the point that he could not breathe. He almost felt that he would suffocate to death. Although he was not considered a living person at the moment. It was at that moment that he suddenly felt as if he was just an ant that could be easily destroyed. If it was only Shenron's strength, he would not have felt that way. However, Shenron was connected to each other. If there were enough of them, it would bring about a change that was greater than 1 + 1 greater than 2. Just now, he had really felt a fatal threat. Of course, he also recognized that the aura belonged to the Dragon Clan. A guess appeared in his mind. Although it was the truth, he did not dare to believe it. Was Qin Yu many times more heaven-defying than he had imagined him to be? There is no need to think so much. No matter what your purpose is, as long as you do not interfere with my business, I will let you go. After all, he had also received a gift. He had to respect his seniors. Hierarch Thunder Firmament was still quite frightened. After thinking about it, he directly apologized. He curled up tightly into a ball and did not know much about the outside world. He directly and firmly curled up in the pendant. When there was a big commotion outside, he would naturally be able to sense it. If there was nothing big, he would not move a little. He did not want to be targeted. If that happened, he would end up in an extremely miserable state. Just like the person that he had casually crushed to death. A soul that had been passed down since ancient times. Perhaps he would end up in the same state. Thunder Realm. Something so big had happened. He only panicked for a long time. After all, he did not want to make a big deal out of it. The other 2 great Shenron only slightly exploited him. After the newly appointed Black Phoenix Tower Master satisfied all the conditions, he recuperated and honed his strength. Fortunately, other than losing a pendant, he didn't lose anything else. The pendant had not revealed its magical power. In the end, he gave up looking for it. It was definitely not wise to go against such an expert. Therefore, he only asked people to pay attention to Qin Yu's movements. He didn't do anything else. This was what most people had guessed. After all, if he really provoked Qin Yu again, he might not be able to sit firmly in his current position. If he was not careful, he would be beaten into a cripple. That would be a despairing thing. After waiting for half a month, the newly appointed Black Phoenix Tower Master still did not receive any news about Qin Yu. It was as if he had suddenly disappeared into thin air. Naturally, he felt a lot more relaxed. In this way, he could be at ease. Qin Yu's sudden disappearance should mean that he had gone to the place where he had come from. It just so happened that he could continue to sit in his current position without any worries. He did not have to worry about any trouble in the future. There was a natural boundary between the Thunder Realm and other places. This was deliberately done by Shinran. However, Thunder Shinran could not wait for Qin Yu to leave as soon as possible. Of course, he opened the door wide. He directly opened a safe and stable passage. He sent him to the Dark Realm. Dark Light Shinran had been hiding in the deepest part of the abyss. For some reason, he suddenly woke up from a deep sleep. It was as if the malice of the entire world was pressing on him. However, after careful investigation, he found nothing in the end. However, the Dark Light Divine Dragon would not ignore this reminder. He even took this little change as a warning to himself. In that case, who would choose to go against him? Who in the Dark Realm was it? Could it be an expert who had broken through to the true God Realm not long ago? Chapter 1095. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. Dark Light Shinran was naturally aware of the big movement some time ago. The outside world was bustling, and he had been hiding in the dark, quietly watching. But not long ago, the monstrous vision disappeared without a trace. And there was one more true God expert in this world. Other than the true God expert, Dark Light Shinran could not think of anyone else. Who was it that could pose such a great threat to him? Qin Yu did not meet any acquaintances after coming to this land. On the contrary, everywhere was unfamiliar. Compared to before, the sky here was bright. Although there was still no light, it was very bright. What's going on? Obviously, during this period of time, something must have happened in the Dark Realm that he did not know about. And this matter was related to the reason for the change of the entire Divine Realm. At this time, the part of Light Shenron's aura that had been integrated into his body began to restlessly move. It kept moving in one direction. In the end, after trying, Qin Yu easily found out. This wisp of aura left behind by Light Shinran attached great importance to that direction. It seemed that there was something there. There was a high probability that the thing that could make Shinran vigilant was also Shinran. Seeing that the distance was not very far, Qin Yu went directly. After arriving, he saw a huge altar. There were many people tied up on the altar. Someone wanted to summon Dark Light Shinran and borrow Shenron's power. After someone broke through to the true God realm, more and more people wanted to take the unconventional path. The Dark Realm was not a peaceful world to begin with. It was also a common thing for someone to capture many people and use them as an extreme to achieve their own goals. It was just that this time it was a little too big. Almost all the Senzen were killed. Let us go, you are seeking your own death. The legendary Dark Light Shinran likes blood very much, and will also twist the heads of the sacrificers. Let go now, and we won't cause you any trouble. This is your last chance. The people who were tied to the posts did not panic. They just struggled and tried to persuade the person behind the scenes to stop. As for the warning that he would never cause any trouble for them, the person behind the scenes was completely disdainful. He wasn't a sacrificer to begin with, so his head wouldn't be in any danger after the ritual began. As for the promise that he wouldn't look for trouble, he wouldn't believe it at all. Where is this place? This was the Dark World. No one's words could be trusted. The so-called not looking for trouble was equivalent to saying that he would definitely look for trouble in the future. Among these people, there was no lack of major forces. If he were to release all of them, what awaited him would be an endless pursuit. At this moment, one of the people who were trapped saw the figure standing in the distance. Zhang Xian's eyes lit up as he shouted loudly, "Save him! This lunatic is going to summon dark light Shinran." Everyone knew about the existence of Shinran, but very few people were able to see it. Even if one's strength stood at the peak, it was very rare for one to find Shinran. It was almost impossible to find the 9 greats of Shinran as easily as Qin Yu. This was because every Shinran had its own hiding place and had its own unique characteristic. Why should I save you? What a coincidence. I'm also here to look for dark light Shinran. Now that I can sit back and enjoy the fruits of others' labor, why should I interfere? The faces of the people who were trapped became even uglier. Originally, they were very surprised to see someone coming over. But seeing that Qin Yu had arrived, it was obvious that he had no intention of helping them. Their mood was extremely bad, especially the mastermind behind the scenes. He even covered himself in a large cloak, and his voice was hoarse. But that laughter was so ear-piercing that it made the faces of all the people who were trapped turn ashen. Now, this made them look even more incompetent. They were all people who stood at the peak, but now they couldn't do anything. Qin Yu stood to the side. Just like he said, he stood there and watched the show. Who was the innocent one here? He came this time to find dark light Shinran. What that person wanted to do had nothing to do with him. It couldn't be better if he could find traces of dark light Shinran as soon as he came. Not long after dark light Shinran woke up, he felt that someone was summoning him. He immediately felt that this matter was interesting. If there was no summoning, he wouldn't be able to leave this space easily. It was like someone giving him a pillow when he was sleepy. Just as a crack was opened, dark light Shinran was about to slowly poke his body out. Suddenly, he felt the dangerous aura that had made him extremely afraid just now. He directly shrank back again. It took a lot of effort to capture so many experts and gather enough sacrifices behind the scenes. Originally, he was very surprised when he saw that dark light Shinran wanted to come out. But for some reason, it was only a small crack that appeared. He didn't even see a trace of Shinran. He only saw an eye. The crack closed in front of him. Nothing around him changed. If not, he really did see a gap just now. He thought that he was seeing things. How could it be? How could it be? My plan is foolproof. All the sacrifices are placed here, no more, no less. Logically speaking, this kind of situation should never happen. Where on earth did the accident happen? The black hand behind the scenes suddenly turned his gaze to Qin Yu. The cloak he was wearing was very large, and the hood was also very wide. It covered his entire face, not revealing the slightest bit. But it gave people the feeling that the person under the cloak was staring at Qin Yu with extremely fierce eyes. You are the only one who changed. Whether it has anything to do with you or not, you will suffer my anger. Qin Yu originally wanted to wait here until dark light Shinran came out by himself. But who knew that dark light Shinran actually ran away and shrank back by himself? He was already in a bad mood, and there was another person boasting shamelessly in front of him. He directly took out a knife. If he wasn't a true god, he had no ability to fight against him. Dominating heaven knife. He died with one knife. When the person died, the cloak he was wearing naturally had no hiding effect. A face that could be considered handsome was revealed. But the other half was very ferocious and terrifying. The blood vessels on it seemed to be alive, and they were still jumping. But then all of this began to change. The corpse seemed to be accelerated by time, and it kept drying and aging. In the end, it slowly turned into dust. The few people who were trapped were very surprised, thinking that they would definitely be released this time. But not long after, they saw Qin Yu quickly find a thin book on the person behind the scenes. The sacrifice started again, and dark light Shinran felt a familiar aura again. Chapter 1096. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. This time, the Dark Light Divine Dragon couldn't escape so easily. If he wanted to escape, basically, it was equivalent to throwing one's own face to the ground and then giving it a few more kicks. He was provoked again and again. Dark Light Shinran was not going to endure it anymore. It was just a dangerous aura anyway. He did not believe that he would be defeated by the owner of the dangerous aura this time. He wanted to take this opportunity to see who exactly was the person who could make him feel danger. If it was a true god, maybe he could communicate with this person. If it was not a true god, then he wanted to see where this person's ability came from. Another long crack appeared in the sky. Dark Light Shenron's aura leaked out from it. This time, it did not close suddenly for no reason. Instead, it was proceeding very smoothly. The Dark Light Divine Dragon also saw a few sacrificial offerings for itself. He could not help but be very satisfied. The quality of these offerings was also very high. He had also accepted sacrifices before, but the offerings were just ordinary. This time it was different. The quality was already good. "Why did you call me here?" Dark Light Shinran did not seem to notice that there was a dangerous aura around him that was constantly agitating. He came over slowly and wanted to use his offerings. Since he was here, these things should belong to him. But he temporarily forgot that there was an existence here that could make him feel extremely dangerous. When he was attacked, Dark Light Shinran did not react at first. He took the hit directly. And this hit even caused him to be seriously injured. "I did not summon you here to let you slowly enjoy your offerings here. Now you are the last one left. Are you going to hand them over or not?" Qin Yu had already discovered that these Shinran were connected to each other. Although it seemed that they had not communicated with each other for many years. Some of them even had grudges against each other. But without exception, there was some kind of connection between them. So he was always on guard against Shinran. He would not believe that Dark Light Shinran was excluded from this. But Dark Light Shinran had not yet reacted and was only seriously injured. And there were some who were looking around at a loss. But the people in the dark world were definitely not good people. Although he looked a little helpless, he had already thought of 10,000 ways to kill people. He really did not know what Qin Yu wanted him to do. Because he did not pay much attention to the outside world, although he had some connections with the other Shinran. But he had always been indifferent to these things. Some time ago, only the matter of someone breaking through to the god realm had woken him up from his sleep. Because he fell into a deep sleep in a hurry, he didn't know much about these things. But he could vaguely feel it. At this moment, the other mystical dragons were also aware of the situation, but they did not think too deeply about it. The other people who had escaped death, and they could not even Shinran. Just to Shinran. They did not want to suffer such an unexpected disaster again. He had been sacrificed twice for no reason. 2 times. Last time, there wasn't much danger, but this time, he almost lost his life. To be able to climb to their current position. Which one of them was not an old monster who had lived for countless years. They took their own fate very seriously. At this moment, they did not care who had captured them. They did not care why they had fallen into such a situation. They just secretly swore that if anyone could save them and get out of this place, even if they had to pay a high price, so what? No matter how precious the things were. Compared to their own lives, there was no way it could be compared at all. What do you mean by teaching? I don't understand what you are talking about. You suddenly attacked just now, right? Your strength is not bad. Dark Light Shinran began to be a little vigilant against Qin Yu. He could feel that Qin Yu had an aura that he hated the most. It felt like the unique aura of Light Shinran. It was just that he was not sure whether it was Light Shinran or not. So he did not directly kill him for a while. Of course, there was another reason. He had accidentally been seriously injured just now. So at this moment, he did not have much ability to attack Qin Yu. In fact, he was just bluffing. But he wanted to take advantage of this little bluff. He could really suppress Qin Yu. If he could, then he would naturally be less of a threat. However, Qin Yu knew how much strength he had in his attack. If Dark Light Shenron really dared to attack him, if that was the case, then he would have to think highly of him. However, the Dark Light Divine Dragon was spouting a bunch of useless nonsense. He did not even dare to attack. He could only use such useless words to temporarily stop all his actions. It could be seen that his strength had declined to a certain level, although it was not to the extent that he could seriously injure and kill Shenron with one blow. But it was not convenient for him to attack. At this time, Dark Light Shenron had already lost the initiative. He could not help but regret again why he had come out with nothing to do. Even if Qin Yu deliberately lured him out, he should not have been so rash. He still came out after sensing the danger. Now that he was injured, he had no choice but to give up. It was simply impossible for him to escape back to the space that belonged to him unscathed in front of Qin Yu. He even guessed that Qin Yu might have a way to open that space. He could forcibly tear it open and break in. The reason why he did not do that before. It was just to leave him some face, that's all. It was also possible that he did not want to spend so much effort. So he chose a choice that did not take time at all and was very easy, very relaxed. We should not have any grudges before. According to you humans, we should mind our own business. If you are here for something, you can say it. I can consider a peaceful resolution of this matter. In fact, I have always been more peace-loving. If you and I continue to be in a stalemate, it will not end well for either of us. Dark Light Shenron tried to persuade Qin Yu with words. But Qin Yu just had a slightly disdainful smile. If he was the kind of person who could be easily dismissed with anything, then why did he come over? Why did he have to make so much trouble for himself? Think about it carefully. You should be able to guess what my purpose is this time. Dark Light Shenron had a lot of doubts. He really did not know what Qin Yu's real purpose was. But he did not dare to think about it carefully, because he suddenly had a little bit of fear. After thinking carefully for 2 minutes, he suddenly felt the aura of the other 8 Shenron on Qin Yu. This situation could only be that Qin Yu had already looked for the 8 Shenron before, and he took a very important part of them. And this kind of thing was most likely, "You want my essence blood?" That is impossible. Chapter 1097. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. Dark Light Shenron couldn't help but think of a person he had seen before. That person was very, very powerful. He was so powerful that no one in the world could deal with him. That person had reached the highest realm above the true God. That person seemed to have reached the peak. Then he broke through the void and disappeared. In short, he never appeared again. Now there was another person with a similar aura. He wasn't sure if Qin Yu was that person's successor. But now he couldn't take out his essence blood, because he had faintly touched a higher realm. If he took out his essence blood, all his previous efforts would be in vain. How could he be willing to accept that? Impossible. I don't care what the other coward said to you, but you can't take my essence blood from me. Some people in Dark Light Shenron raised their chins proudly. They stared at Qin Yu below with their eyes. At this moment, the several divine dragons that had been following Qin Yu the entire time were filled with unwillingness. They all came out one by one and formed a colorful giant screen in the sky. Dark Light Shenron had never seen such a big battle. When all the dragons gathered together before, it didn't make him panic like now. This was because they had only gathered together previously. But now all the dragons were targeting him. His strength was on the verge of a breakthrough. Under normal circumstances, he could fight with any Shenron, and he could gain the upper hand. But now he wasn't sure. Because it wasn't 1 or 2 dragons, it was a large group. How was he supposed to defend himself against such a large group of mystical dragons? You are so self-deprecating. I can't say anything to you. Your decision can't interfere with me. We have long been independent of each other. Do you want to break this rule? After saying that, he was ready to escape at any time. Under the siege of so many Shinran dragons, he might not be able to escape unscathed. It seemed that only the idea of capturing Qin Yu might be more useful. If he could capture Qin Yu, then all the trouble he had experienced before. It wouldn't be trouble. Because of the contract, all the Shinran dragons had to be a little more polite to him. Especially those who had signed a real master-servant contract with Qin Yu. In order to not suffer too much damage, they could only try their best to stand on his side. Thinking of this, Dark Light Shinran suddenly began to move. First, he pretended to tear a black crack. The other Shinran dragons thought that he was going to escape and quickly chased him. But at that moment, the divine dragon of dark light dove straight down. His goal was clear. It was only Qin Yu. If he could capture Qin Yu, he would be completely other people's matters. He didn't want to lose his essence blood, nor was he willing to compromise so easily. But the trouble now was that if he didn't compromise, he wouldn't be able to escape. Qin Yu was the only breakthrough point left. He could choose to make a breakthrough. Since all of this was caused by you, then you should take responsibility for it. Dark Light Shinran was very fast. Especially when it was descending at high speed, it was like a dark belt of light. It lived up to its name. The people who were trapped next to him were even more dumbfounded. Then, they screamed in horror. At this moment, they finally realized the situation they were in. According to the position where Qin Yu was standing at this time, if Dark Light Shinran really fell, then everyone would be implicated. At that time, none of them would be able to get away with it. At this moment, they naturally used all kinds of methods to escape. But they were trapped too tightly before. Even if they tried all kinds of methods, they could only destroy the predicament to a certain extent, but they couldn't escape. Just like that, Qin Yu did not dodge at all. He continued to wait. It was as if he was scared. Dark Light Shinran felt that something was wrong. With Qin Yu's strength, how could he be scared? He didn't dodge like this. Was it because he had a backup plan? Suddenly, he felt that everything around him had changed. The vicissitudes of life were nothing more than this. After all, Dark Light Shinran's strength was there. Shinran also had the realm of a true god. It was just that compared to an ordinary true god Shinran, it didn't have much fighting power. Its strength was there. But generally speaking, it couldn't be used to the extreme. It was very different from people who really broke through to true God with their own strength. So, he couldn't dodge immediately. Instead, he felt the changes in his body. The scales on his body suddenly became old and hard. He knew that this was the symptom before ectasis, but it was obviously not time yet. If it weren't for the changes and influences brought about by the vicissitudes of life, he definitely wouldn't have entered the ectasis period so easily. And compared to this, it was even more shocking. Qin Yu clearly didn't seem to have reached the realm of a true god. But he had the strength similar to a true god. If he added his essence and blood, Qin Yu would become the second immortal king. There was only one immortal king in this world. There was only one person who could break all the restrictions. If another one appeared, he couldn't believe how many years he would have to sleep. Because of the strength of the immortal king, and also because of the will of the world. Not many Shinran remembered that scene back then. But he still remembered. He remembered how terrifying the immortal king was, and he knew better than anyone else how difficult it was to provoke Qin Yu at this time. At the most critical moment, Dark Light Shinran suddenly ran away. He seized this opportunity and also fell into the trap. But in general, he still had a little bit of time left. If he forced himself to use this little bit of time to do something, no one could guarantee what he could do. But he didn't seize this opportunity. Instead, he chose to run away without hesitation when he had the chance. Even though Shinran didn't understand why he ran away so quickly. This was not in line with Dark Light Shenron's character at all. Chapter 1098. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. The Shinran leaders didn't understand why Dark Light Shinran ran away so fast. But they knew that there must be a reason for this strange situation. All the Shinran leaders focused their attention on Qin Yu. If there was a reason for this, then could it be because of Qin Yu that things turned out this way? It seemed that there was only one possibility now. But Qin Yu himself didn't know why Dark Light Shinran ran away so fast. Before he left, he even had the intention to flee. Furthermore, in that split second, he actually managed to seize the opportunity to escape. If you guys work together, you should be able to catch him. Of course, this was for sure. If the Shinran leaders worked together, they would be able to catch him. If there was no way to catch Dark Light Shinran, then there was no point for them to stay here. If there was such a big difference in strength, they wouldn't have been able to maintain a balance. In the ninefold divine realm, the strength of each Shinran was balanced. Basically, they were about the same. No one was more outstanding. Although Dark Light Shinran was indeed very powerful, he was even one of the best. They Shinran leaders couldn't compete with him in a one-on-one fight. But if they really worked together, who would win and who would lose was a matter that had been determined long ago. In that case, you guys can summon him back. I'm too lazy to waste my energy. Of course, Qin Yu wouldn't waste so much effort to catch him himself. Since there were people around him who could be used, there was no need to waste too much effort. After the Shinran leaders heard the order, they wanted to tear the void apart without hesitation. The place where Dark Light Shinran was located was very secretive. But if all the Shinran leaders worked together, they would definitely be able to find Dark Light Shenron's current location. This wasn't a troublesome matter to begin with. Especially when the phrase strength in numbers was thoroughly implemented, it was even less of a problem. Dark Light Shinran also knew that there was nothing he could do. But when he thought of that possibility just now, he couldn't help but hide. He couldn't help but go into hiding, and the first one to come to him wasn't out of his expectation. Moreover, no matter who came to him, he had already thought of his own explanation. After all, he didn't lie about the Immortal King at all. As long as he said it with enough sincerity, there would definitely be people who would understand what he meant. Moreover, he wasn't lying. Shinran, who had been sent out, did not return. This was unexpected, but Qin Yu no longer needed to rely on Shinran. Besides, with the contract in place, even if Shinran betrayed him temporarily, it wouldn't affect him much. At most, they would lose a few helpers. However, he had vaguely found a crack just now and was looking in that direction. Sooner or later, they would be able to find out where Dark Light Shinran was hiding. Of course, this would be troublesome. When there was still a helper by his side that he could use, there was no need for him to sign off on a carpet search, because once the search began, it would take several days. It was a pity to waste all his time here. Divine Thundersky didn't expect that he would be awakened in such a situation. However, after he understood what Qin Yu meant, he was so scared that his whole body almost started to tremble. He was asking him to find Shinran and confront them directly. Currently, he didn't have the ability to confront Shinran. However, he couldn't ask why, even though he might be in danger in this matter. Nevertheless, he still had a place to stay. Of course, negotiations were inevitable. After all, he was taking a huge risk. Qin Yu didn't care what he wanted and directly asked him to do it. As for whether he would be able to pay in the end, that was a matter of course. He had a lot of things in his hands, although they were precious enough. There weren't many things that could move a divine master. However, as long as they existed in this world, he could get them. Moreover, it was just a small matter of finding someone. He wasn't really asking him to be a hired thug. Therefore, Divine Thundersky only asked for some precious materials and didn't ask for many precious things. Qin Yu was naturally able to easily satisfy them. After the two sides agreed on the terms, Divine Thundersky began to patrol the area. With his strength, he used up a lot of energy. However, he had created the world by himself. All he had to do was find out about the existence of another space, which was a piece of cake for him. It was very easy. Found it? Not long after, Hierarch Thunder Firmament exclaimed in surprise. He had found the location of the other space. Sure enough, it was. In the surroundings, Qin Yu's thoughts were completely correct. Moreover, it was very close to this place. After all, it had been entered and exited several times. It had been forcefully broken open before. He really had a big advantage in finding it. It didn't take much effort at all to find the traces. Then, he followed the clues and found the place. Of course, although it seemed simple, if one wasn't as strong as him, it would take a certain amount of time to find the place. If one was much weaker than him, it was even possible that one wouldn't even find the traces. Of course, Qin Yu was talented and was outside the ranks of ordinary people. However, he was more experienced after all. Qin Yu held a saber. The current dominating Heaven Saber was no longer the original dominating Heaven Saber. He had fused many precious materials into it. It had gradually begun to give birth to its own spirit. It also had many special abilities, such as tearing the void and the power of the world. It was enough for him to enter the space created by Dark Light Shinran alone. There was almost nothing inside. It was completely dark and empty. However, it could also make people feel that it was an independent space. Not only was this space independent, but it was also very large. At least, Qin Yu hadn't seen any traces of Shinran since he had just arrived. The surrounding space was so big that it was a little beyond his imagination. It was as if it was infinitely big. However, none of this was a problem for him. The power of light Shinran was also in his body, trying to illuminate the darkness. It was just a piece of cake. He casually summoned light, and a strong white light rose from the darkness for no reason. Once again, he waved his hand, and the fire suddenly appeared and spread to the surroundings. Soon, the surroundings became a thick sea of fire. There was only one place where there was no thick fire. In fact, the few Shinran Taoists didn't mean to betray their master. It was just that they were immersed in their memories because of Dark Light Shenron's interference. Chapter 1099. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation receiving memories was an extremely long process. The several great Shinran who were immersed in ancient memories were currently in a deep sleep. Obviously, they would wake up again soon. But in the end, there would be a blank period. Dark Light Shinran knew that this was his real chance. Now, he only had a little chance left. If the other mystical dragons were to recall their memories, they would be able to do so. He couldn't guarantee that these Shinran would not stand with him. So now, he could only strike first to gain the upper hand. He had to get rid of the root of the matter as much as possible. And now, the root of this matter was Qin Yu. As long as you die, nothing will happen to me. As long as something happens to you, I don't believe that these guys will fall out with me over a dead person. Dark Light Shenron's eyes flashed with an extremely sharp light. He was not willing to compromise easily, and he had gone to the extreme. He was even more unwilling to see another immortal king being born because of him. What did it mean to gather the blood essence of the 9 great Shinran? It was equivalent to gathering all the top forces in the entire 9-fold God realm. Although it wasn't a lot, it was only a few drops of blood essence. But what was fused in it was the fusion of the top forces in the entire 9-fold God realm. It could even produce the power to create a new world. Previously, the immortal king was successful in this way. If Qin Yu also got his blood essence, and gathered the power of the 9 great Shinran, at that time, another immortal king would appear. Perhaps this could break the city rules, but Dark Light Shinran was not willing to have such a peerless expert appear, because that represented all their Shinran, including all the people in the 9-fold God realm, all the power added together. They couldn't shake the existence of that person either. Even the power of heaven and earth added together could not do anything to him. No one could do anything to him. At that time, with the immortal king realm, he could step into the void and truly create a new world that belonged to him. That was the god of creation of a world. Dark Light Shinran yearned for that realm very much, but was also extremely afraid of it. Anyone other than himself who could possibly reach that level would be viewed as an enemy by him. Qin Yu saw several Shinran leaders close their eyes as if they were dead. This was not beyond his expectations. It was impossible for all the major cities of Shinran to rebel, so it could only be because someone had done something. Now it seemed that Dark Light Shinran had used some special method to make them temporarily fall into a deep sleep. With your strength, you might not be able to defeat me. There's a huge difference between our strengths. Qin Yu wasn't being arrogant. He was just stating a fact in a calm moment. Dark Light Shinran's strength might be really high, but he already had the power of 8 Shinran in his hands. Many of them could restrain Dark Light Shinran, and with all his trump cards, Dark Light Shinran might not be able to contend against him. The outcome of the battle between the two was basically certain, but Dark Light Shinran didn't want to think so. He was only thinking about how he could win and how he could obtain the final victory, but he didn't think about this. Dark Light Shinran had great confidence in his ability, so he didn't think about what would happen if he lost, because the result was already predetermined. Even if he lost in the end, the price he had to pay was a drop of essence blood. As for whether he would dissipate between heaven and earth, it was almost impossible. Qin Yu rushed up directly without hesitation, and used all the martial arts he had mastered on the way. The man and the dragon fought for more than 300 rounds, and there was still no winner. No one knew how long this battle would last, and the major cities of Shinran still hadn't woken up, but it was obvious. The longer the battle dragged on, the greater the advantage Qin Yu had. He seemed to never be tired, and Dark Light Shinran was inevitably frightened at this moment. He had never seen a human with such great physical strength. He had the power of the whole world as his backing, but he still saw how powerful Qin Yu was. He even felt fear because of this. This shouldn't have happened, but fear was not something he could control at will. The closer it got, the brighter Qin Yu's eyes became, and his movements became faster and faster. In the end, some places even overlap. The speed was so fast that it gave birth to a new kind of power. See Mulberry Field, Sky Tyrant Saber Technique, Azure Dragon Technique, Dragon Slaying Roar, all the moves were fused together in an instant when they reached the pinnacle. A brand new door opened for Qin Yu, and Qin Yu called this attack that condensed all the power, Azure Dragon crossing the sea, churning endlessly, destroying the world. There was an extremely ancient dragon shadow faintly appearing behind him. It was as if there was a vast sea, and the dark sky kept stirring. The seawater that raised huge waves and the huge and majestic figure. Dark Light Shinran couldn't breathe. He was stunned for a moment and lost. This time, he was defeated in a muddle. Even if he didn't want to admit it, he had lost completely. It shouldn't be like this. I don't believe it. Why? The result is the same. Why did I still lose? You haven't even reached the true God realm. Even if you are the future immortal king, you shouldn't have such strength when you haven't even reached the true God realm. Dark Light Shinran couldn't believe why the result was like this. The reason why he paid so much and didn't escape into the void. He waited until everything was over before he appeared because he had some memory fragments from the past. He dared to guarantee that even if he was the immortal king, he shouldn't have broken through to the true god realm. He had such powerful strength. Even the former one couldn't. This meant that Qin Yu's potential and future strength could only be higher than the immortal king. But he didn't want to admit it. How could there be someone so powerful and monstrous in this world, and it happened to be right in front of him? Qin Yu didn't know what he was talking about. He didn't know why he was so sad and angry. It was as if he couldn't escape some kind of fate. Dark Light Shinran still didn't give up. He wanted to use his last strength. He wanted to strangle Qin Yu in the cradle. This time, it wasn't that he wanted to preserve his strength, but that he wanted to fight with the so-called fate. But it was just one slash. Dark Light Shenron's eyes had already dimmed, and there was suddenly a deep wound on his body that showed his bones. This time, he was directly killed. No matter how powerful he was, under such an attack, he could only be reduced to an ordinary corpse. A generation of Shinran died. Dark Light Shinran died. His previous small trick of deliberately letting the other Shinran wake up later also lost its effect. Chapter 1100. When the other Shinran woke up slowly, they found that Dark Light Shinran had become a corpse. They couldn't react to what had happened. How did things fall to such a state in such a short period of time? Of course, they thought of something. Not only did they think of it, but they also thought of Qin Yu. Their progress during this period of time was not surprising at all. If they could really reach such a high level, even if they were compared to ordinary people, their speed of improvement was many times faster. It should be a very normal thing. After all, that was an immortal king. Since you're all awake, help me deal with it. If I deal with such a big corpse myself, it might be a little troublesome. I believe that you should have a way to erase the traces here and get what I want. The few Shinran leaders didn't have any objections. At this moment, not to mention that Qin Yu asked them to deal with a Shenron's corpse. It didn't matter even if he asked them to do something even more excessive. After all, following Qin Yu might really be able to see a higher realm. Originally, it was because of this that they slowly calmed down and followed Qin Yu obediently. Now, a part of their guess had been confirmed. Not only would there be no estrangement because of this matter, but they would also be even more loyal. As for Dark Light Shinran, he was originally a guy that everyone disliked. He had always been paranoid. He was a complete lunatic. Naturally, they wouldn't be with him. After the corpse was dealt with and this space was dealt with, they directly left this place. There were many good things in this dark realm, and there were also many good shows to watch. But the most important thing was not this. In the entire dark realm, the leaders of several major forces all disappeared for no reason. It was said that they were caught by some people doing bad things. But for so long, no one could find these people. And no one knew where they were. The entire dark realm was in chaos because of this. It was a complete mess. There weren't many moral concepts here to begin with. The so-called strength was the only thing that could prove oneself here. The only thing that could be exchanged. If one had the strength, they could become the leader of the new generation. This was the reason why countless people risked their lives. Why are they all gone? Hurry up and choose a new leader. Exactly. Since those old fellows have gone missing, the seats should be given to us youngsters. The people of the various factions argued endlessly. There were also those who were loyal to the previous leader and wanted to use this opportunity to plot something. But in the end, they still failed. All of a sudden, chaos ensued. Everyone had their own goals and ideas. Their goals were different, but their ultimate goal was the same. It was all for the position of the highest leader. If they could wield power and do what they wanted to do, it would be very simple. Such a major internal strife had occurred in the dark world. Traces of battle could be seen almost everywhere, and corpses could be seen everywhere. Qin Yu, the culprit of such a huge civil strife, was still on the road. Although he had achieved his goal, for some reason, The path he had come from had suddenly disappeared. Later, he found out that it was because of Dark Light Shenron's death. As the pillar of a world, Dark Light Shenron's death would bring about some subtle changes. The power of the entire world would be greatly weakened. Of course, there would be some changes, but it wouldn't be to the extent that all the passages connected to the outside world would collapse. Even if they collapsed, they could be rebuilt. It was just that no matter how many times they did it, it would waste a little bit of time. Thus, Qin Yu stayed in this world and watched these people killing each other the entire time. He couldn't find the real leaders, and Qin Yu also went back to take a look at those people. After all, after such a long time, they all ran away. But he didn't know what happened back then, but there was a drop of blood on the ground. These bloodstains at least proved that the other party was not in a safe environment. As for who did it, what did it matter? The new passage has been established. We can leave immediately now. Where are we going now? Qin Yu heard this, but he didn't have the slightest reaction. He was thinking about whether to directly refine and absorb the power of the 9 great Shinran on the spot. What would happen? So far, he didn't know. He could only tell a little from Dark Light Shenron's expression. At least for Dark Light Shenron, this was something he absolutely didn't want to see. So, even if he had to risk his life, he had to stop him. As for the speculations about the Immortal King, Shinron didn't hide them from him. Instead, he directly told him. But after all, these were just speculations. Even if Qin Yu had almost unlimited potential, he also had very powerful abilities. But this didn't mean that he would be exactly the same as the previous person. Qin Yu didn't think that he was someone's replacement. He was just himself. Divine Master Xian Tian suddenly looked up as if he felt something. Unknowingly, an illusory shadow appeared in the originally clear sky. And no matter where he was, he could see through this illusory shadow. He saw a small figure. And above that small figure was the rolling power of the heavenly tribulation. Divine Master Xian Tian was very familiar with the power of the heavenly tribulation. After all, it hadn't been long since he walked out of there. Perhaps there was already someone in this world who had broken through like him. However, even if it was just a shadow, he could still tell. It was definitely not a stranger he didn't know. It was his little disciple who he cared about the most. I didn't expect it to be so fast. He's so much happier than me as a master. Sure enough, the new generation excels the old. The old generation. Forget it, let's not say such disappointing words. The new generation excels the old. The last sentence wasn't very auspicious. Moreover, they were master and disciple. There was no need to use such a description. Divine Master Xian Tian calmly looked at the shadow in the sky. However, in the entire world, the others couldn't calm down. Who was this person? Where did he come from? Almost no one knew. Now, a person had suddenly broken through. The people who had yet to recover from the news of Divine Master Xian Tian's breakthrough were stunned. They couldn't help but be slightly stunned. At the same time, they looked up at the sky. They kept thinking, is the restrictive power now so weak? He could easily try to break through. If this person succeeded in breaking through this time, they would have to give it a try. Chapter 1101. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. Some people felt that, since people had broken through one after another, perhaps this was a hint to them. They didn't need to look for things from their predecessors. Instead, they should forge their own path. And there was a small number of people who insisted that this was the second person to break through. He must have gotten the legendary tribulation fruit. Otherwise, when everyone was on the same level, how could someone break through at this time? As for whether this person was someone unknown in the past, someone they hadn't heard of, this was almost impossible. At least no one thought that there was such a powerful person in this world. To be able to surpass them by so many times and succeed in breaking through in such a short time. As for the soul of the other divine master that had been in Qin Yu's body all this time, he watched all of this with a slight numbness. He had long guessed that Qin Yu might break through in the near future. He just didn't expect it to be so soon after refining the last drop of blood essence. For some reason, the power of the tribulation in the sky naturally pressed down, and it was so strong that it almost suppressed and destroyed everything. This was the power of heaven and earth, all added together. This was the confrontation between the entire ninefold divine realm and Qin Yu. The Son of Heaven's jealousy. In the legends, the Son of Heaven's jealousy had the ability that even the heavens were jealous of. They would set up layers of tests. If everything went smoothly, he would be able to pass countless tests. Then, he would possess supreme power. As for how powerful they were, no one knew, because this was just a legend. But now it seemed that a Son of Heaven's jealousy had really appeared in this world. Even the heavens were jealous. So when the tribulation descended, just the initial power was enough to destroy heaven and earth. Qin Yu's expression didn't change as he directly endured it. Although the power of this blow was extremely strong, it was also a benefit for him. Although the power was strong, as long as it was controlled properly, it wouldn't take his life. Landing on his body would cause him some damage, but it would also speed up the healing of his wounds. Although the pain was unbearable, it could greatly enhance his physical fitness. In general, there were only benefits and no disadvantages. After forcefully withstanding the first blow, the second blow was still brewing. In the entire dark world, all the living beings went crazy. Even some of the existences in the void felt this majestic power. They were all moving in the same direction. He couldn't help but want to break through this world again and again. He wanted to see what was going on. The vitality of the entire world became an important factor in luring the void demon. At this moment, there were still many people who didn't understand the situation. Only a portion of them recognized that person. The location of the tribulation should be somewhere in the dark world. However, they were unable to easily find him. They could only look around, trying to see if they could find the person they were looking for. But to no avail. Because once they got close to that place, they would only need to get a little closer. He felt a dull pain in his chest, and directly spat out a mouthful of blood. He didn't dare to continue walking forward. Because many people had tried and failed, it made people very curious. Who was the person undergoing the tribulation? He actually possessed such terrifying strength to be able to withstand the heavenly tribulation, and it seemed that his vitality was still tenacious. From the beginning to the end, there was only a slight frown. It was obvious that he wasn't feeling very good. But his position never changed. Even his fingers didn't tremble. Those who were close could naturally see some details. So not long after, the entire ninefold divine realm knew about this matter. No, it's too terrifying. How could it be like this? The power of the heavenly tribulation shouldn't be so strong. Could it be that the heavens are jealous of you? But even so, it's very strange. The power of the heavenly tribulation can only be so great, and you're suffering more. Qin Yu didn't feel the slightest bit moved when he heard these words. Could this really be considered as pain? He didn't feel anything from the beginning to the end. Although there was some pressure, it was only a certain amount. It wouldn't cause him great harm. That's all. At most, I'll continue to bear it. If this small heavenly tribulation can completely destroy me, then there's no need for me to break through. He might as well be a salted fish and a cripple. Anyway, with his current strength, he could dominate the ninefold divine realm. He could be one of the best. So why did he seek to break through? It was nothing more than to seek a higher realm. As for what would happen in between, it didn't matter at all. There was only one thing he wanted to do, and that was to charge forward without any regrets, until he reached the peak or had to temporarily stop for some reason. He had already stopped once. In the pursuit of strength, he couldn't stop again. The power of the heavenly tribulation grew stronger and stronger. It didn't take long at all. The second heavenly tribulation had already struck down. Compared to before, the power this time was much greater, and it also made the entire world a little weaker. It was as if it was using all its strength to prevent Xinyu from breaking through to this realm. But the power of the heavens and the earth, it was just the power of the heavens and the earth. How could it restrict Xinyu from breaking through? If he was trapped by the power of the heavens and the earth, he would never have to seek to break through again. Nothing could defeat him. Not even the heavens and the earth. Even if the ninefold divine realm risked its life and the destruction of the world, it wouldn't let him break through. Then he must give it a try and break through. To break through himself, to break through his current realm, and to break through the entire world. Even if the world wanted to perish with him, he wouldn't have the slightest bit of regret for restraining him. A monstrous and powerful will shot straight into the sky. In the end, the power of the heavenly tribulation still gradually weakened and didn't become stronger. Perhaps it was a compromise. Or perhaps it wasn't a compromise. The void demon, feeling the increasingly weak protective power, just buried its head and continued to charge forward. All of a sudden, a particularly large and mighty figure appeared among the void demons. It appeared next to the weak barrier. All he did was raise his hand and slap him. There was the sound of a mirror shattering. The canopy in the dark realm also shattered at the same time. It shattered into countless pieces, revealing an extremely large hole. And from this large hole, a hand stretched out and scattered in all directions. It casually grabbed a person and was about to pull him along. The large hole in the dark realm was much bigger than the one in the immortal realm. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.